Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to listen to an entire album today, going through each song track by track, exploring what they're doing in isolation and within the larger whole. Today we're going to be looking at Will Wood's, I was going to say third album. I actually don't know where this sits in the lineage of Will's work, but it is the third Will Wood album I'm checking out. And being that there's only 4 in total, I'm sure we'll get to the last one sometime this year. It's pretty early, so I kind of assumed this would take a little longer until we got to, but we are checking Everything Is a Lot out today. This is 13 tracks at 49 minutes. A lot of these are on the shorter side, in the 2 to 3 minute range. Couple dip into the 4. We have a few 5s in here. Knowing Will Wood, though, this is an incredibly eclectic album with a lot of different sounds on it, so I'm sure I'm going to have a lot to talk about. Despite the album only being 50 minutes in length, I'm sure this is going to be 3.5-hour video minimum. Will Wood albums just aren't something that by the end of the video I can say, well, that track was like the rest. I don't have a lot to add to the conversation. Most of the songs are going to be doing something fresh or new or unique. I also think in both of the other Will Wood albums that we've checked out, there has been lyrical themes running through them too. I'm going to assume that's consistent here as well. So there's always something to tie into some sort of larger story and to have this grander understanding of the work as a whole to talk about as well. So, I mean, I'm just expecting a lengthy video today. We're going to kick it off with the first track, though. These titles are absolutely bonkers. This one's 6 Up, 5-0, Cop Out, Pro Con. Most of the titles are wild like that, and almost all of them have subtitles as well, such as the Pro Con on this one. All right, let's dive in, see what Will Wood and the Tapeworms is bringing to the table today. Kind of dangerous, especially with these really tense chords over here. Dude. Hitting the triplet descent. That is a catchy little melody. So the sax is chilled out, but vocally he's just as energetic as the first verse. It's interesting to listen to the placement of instruments, like sax, center, but often also off to the left. We have just the bass and drum center now under the vocals. All right. All right. I sometimes forget how straightforward Will's writing can be. Like there's some complexity in here, but I mean it's mostly just two ideas. We have what I'm going to call the verse and what I'm going to call the chorus. And then what differs is what melodies are played on top of them, where the counterpoint sits. Sometimes what the rhythmic energy is, like verse 2 had a lower energy in it than verse 1 did. But I mean, what's actually being played is fairly similar. The bass line, the drum line, the piano line are pretty consistent throughout this. So as far as our rhythm section goes, this track has one energy, one mood, one concept. We might see some different rhythmic devices. Maybe some of the specific notes aren't one-to-one copied when we look at the piano line, but the general gist, the atmosphere, the emotion, all of that is fairly consistent within these parts. Then we have the sax, which primarily has two ideas, either the bum ba ba da ba bum bum ba da ba, that really catchy lick right there, where it's kind of taking lead, usually center channel, or it's playing supplement over on the left to the vocals that are center. And when it does supplement, we usually see some sort of slower ideas, stuff that is still linear and melodic to do counterpoint to the vocals, but different every time that they pop up. And that's pretty much all the instrumentation in here, other than the vocals, which I'm going to touch on in a second. But when we look at the instrumentation of this track, it is focused. I'll give it that. It kind of has its one idea. It is fun, it is bouncy, it is groovy. And it's swung. This is something really interesting. Not that it's swing in and of itself, but that, when did this come out? 2015? I wish I knew more about electro swing or even swing revival, as I'm starting to see more and more of it pop up lately, particularly in the electronic side of music, but I'm sure it's popped up in pop music as well, given how popular, albeit somewhat niche, probably electro swing is. This feels like it is just a hair bit before my understanding of swing getting this revival within the pop scene and circles. So much of this pairing the catchiness of pop music and the palatability as far as sound goes and the bounciness of dance music with the general vibes of swing, which, I mean, swing was already fairly dancey already, but I think especially when you listen to the drums here, you get a very modern 4-on-the-floor feel that swing kind of bounces around. I use the word bounce because the whole idea behind swing is swung eighth notes. Eighth notes is a way to look at the length of a note, no different than quarter notes or 16th notes. An eighth note, when we are in 4/4 like we are here, and the quarter note gets a beat, an eighth note is 2 notes per beat. And we usually look at them equal length. If this is our tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4, eighth notes are going to be ba 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 ba. But when you swing, you change the weighting. You make one a little longer than the other. Ba 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 ba. And so you kind of have this quick bunching together with the second to the first note. That's what swing is all about. There is a groove to it, and dance naturally formed around that sound. But this in particular feels closer to like electronic music. There's a rather consistent beat that goes throughout this track where the swung element is syncopated against that rather than being the core rhythmic device within the song itself. And so this does feel a little bit like electronic music mixed with pop, mixed with swing ideas. I don't think I would ever classify this as pure swing music. It's definitely more modern and a conglomerate of ideas, but the swing is a heavy component to this track. And I did, while I'm listening to this, all I could think of was music that had come out since 2020, post-COVID times, I think is where I really started to pick this up, but also not even just within the realms of electronic music in isolation of like music-centric areas, but also musicals. Granted, I haven't watched this show, but this music feels like it would fit really well inside the universe of what is that show? Completely blank. It's about demons and heaven and angels and stuff, and I can't think about it. I can't think of the name of it, but it's a musical. It's really popular these days. And I've heard a couple of tracks from this show. It is really going to eat me alive that I cannot think of the name of this. Has Been Hotel. I've heard a couple of songs from this show just out of context of the show, and this type of swinginess, this sort of modern but still retro feel to it, I feel like it's popped up in that a little bit. And this entire like poppy swing idea is very modern to me. It kind of blows my mind that this is 11 years old. It feels like it predates that, but it's also so far divorced from what I think its other inspiration is, which is Oingo Boingo. I hear a lot of Danny Elfman in here too. So what I think is really cool about this, and something that I don't think I talk about enough within music, is that very few ideas are ever completely fresh and new. Everything is in conversation with everything else. Danny Elfman can do this kind of fun, jazzy pop music because jazz music existed to be built off of, and Will Wood can be influenced by Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo to create this song, which might have helped, because people might have listened to this a decade ago, influence people to create some popular electro swing today. It's very cool in that regard. And also, I don't know if this is true either, but again, it's kind of something I get as a gist of things, but electro swing feels very internet genre. Like it's not something you kind of hear out in the wild. You don't just turn on the radio station and hear some electro swing, or go to the local department store and hear some electro swing on the radio. And Will Wood also seems to be a very internet artist. Again, not someone I would expect to find that people know about if I just go out and ask random people, but I feel like if I go to specific areas of the internet that aren't even necessarily Will Wood areas of the internet, that people are more likely, or I'm more likely to get a, yeah, I've heard of him response when I bring it up. So again, I see this continued correlation between this specific song and what, electro swing's popularity half a decade to a decade later. Very interesting. Yeah, cool stuff all around. I mentioned the words, the vocal part, and this is this is very Will Wood, but it's also, I think I've mentioned this before. Why can't I think of his name? It's very Tom Waits, in delivery at least. Will's going for a lower, gravelier voice in parts of this. Not quite as low as I got, but there is a grit to it all. And it's kind of a meaty vocal delivery. And there is some full-on, I don't know, false chord harshes in here in a couple of places, but he also pushes the range up and hits some higher notes as well. It has that Tom Waits kind of grit to it. Something a bit more of a life-worn person kind of folky, which is an interesting choice for this. It matches perfectly, but also isn't quite what I would expect. Swing has a cleanliness to it. You don't really get that with the vocals here. Now, the vocal delivery does match everything about the song. Rhythmically, though, the vocals are bouncy with a lot of words and syllables being thrown out at the listener consistently while it is sung. Each syllable does have a specific pitch to it, and it does create melody. Not even melodic quality ostinatos, but there is pure melody in here. It's also incredibly rhythmic focused to the point that it kind of comes off as rap in some places. And from what I heard, there's quite a few sections where syllabic rhyming is a focus, as if there's, wordsmithing going into this more so than, let's just rhyme the last word of every other line, something a bit more simplistic in the rhyme scheme. This is more complex, like I would expect to hear from some of the best rappers, but it isn't rapped. It's just sung really fast with an ever-shifting rhythmic cadence. It kind of merges my favorite elements of rap with singing, and I think that's pretty cool. But I think more importantly is not really the technical side of things, but what it feels like. And it absolutely ends up feeling like another instrument. If you removed the words entirely, which Will does at the end of the track, just ad-libbing vocal lines in the final 30 seconds or so, it absolutely is just another instrument. You could give that to a trumpet and it would feel like it fits perfectly in with all the rest of the instrumentation going on in here. And I really like that because, from the compositional side of things, this is an instrument that absolutely fits within this world, within this atmosphere, within all of the sounds already present, but it's also, at least what I'm assuming based on what I'm hearing, lyrically complex too. The word choices are wild. And it's merging that world of musical technicality and synergy with poetic technicality. And I mean, this is just absolutely up my alley. This is doing so many things, juggling so many objects, and still showing off while doing this complex stuff. It is already difficult to write catchy, groovy melodies. It's already difficult to write a vocal melody that feels like it fits with the instrumentation. And it's difficult to write incredibly dense lyrics that are both, they linguistically make sense, but they're phonetically interesting to listen to, the whole wordsmithing element. And Will's just like, I'm doing all three together. I'll do it all at once. And it blows my mind to kind of have this done at such a level. I think that's about it for this track. As I mentioned, it is kind of one note. It does its one thing really well. I do enjoy the triplet shift just for a rhythmic deviation. Not only do we shift from eighth notes to triplet eighth notes, but it's also shifting from swung eighths to standard eighths, or straight eighths as they're usually called. And that creates an interesting rhythmic shift there. And I don't think it gets overused either, which is really nice. But other than that, I mean, this song does its one thing really well, and it's infectious, and then there's a lot of scatting at the end, which is always fun. I think he's such a performer. I've said this before. Will Wood is a character. He's a personality. He's a performer, and no matter what he's doing, it feels right. It feels like he's just in his element. And at the end of this track, yeah, he's just having fun there. And I always appreciate listening to artists where you can just tell they're enjoying this. And Will Wood's always someone who I get that feeling from. Let's hit some lyrics. This is an interesting track lyrically. It is a song that talks about the corruption of the police force and their abuse of power, but it also talks about how our narrator does all the crime. I think that's really interesting. The end of the first verse says, I'm committed to the mental ward, committing all the crimes. I'm alive and kicking till the split ends fray. Maybe plead insane, guilty, but I'm not to blame. I'm a slave to the main vein, spraying on the mainframe, suffering the infrastructure, hoping I can maintain. So he lives on the fringe of life, mentally and physically, doing pretty much anything he wants, whenever he wants, knowing that it is out there, it is a stressful way to live, but it's the only way they feel they can. I find that to be really interesting as a contrast to a song that is anti-police abusing. Police brutality. Because we'll see in the opening of the first verse, it says, vodka shots dropping down the throats that they've been stomping on, cocking guns, locking up, the quotas are all for shock and awe. It basically says that the police are physically abusing people who are alcoholics, says that they stomp on their throats, and that the police are trigger happy, that they're cocking guns, but that they also have quotas that are for shock and awe to create a visceral reaction to the police brutality in order to stop other people from standing up to the police. They do all of this in order to make them look more powerful and more dangerous, which will hopefully, in their eyes at least, deter people from actually doing anything to stop the corruption and the brutality. I find it really interesting that we have this juxtaposition here. I have heard songs about how people live their lives on the edge. They do drugs, or they are in a gang, or whatever. Definitely something that's a bit more of a criminal lifestyle. And they've been talked about positively. I mean, there's definitely songs out there, it's like, this is who I am, and it's ruining my life, and I need to get better. But there's also songs that glorify and romanticize this type of criminal behavior. And I've also heard anti-cop songs. I don't think I've ever heard the two smashed together. It's a really interesting juxtaposition here. Verse 2 continues on talking about people being locked up for small things. Basically, again, it's just police abusing their stance. It also says that heaven knows that God's just sitting up there like, oh, hell no. As if God's just looking at humanity and he's like, yeah, I'm not touching that. They're on their own now. I don't know what they're doing, but things are getting too weird for me. But let me get back to this line. It says, only one thing comes to those who wait. It's never too late to embrace your fate. And I think that's really interesting. Usually the phrase is good things come to those who wait. But I think the implication here is that if you wait and let life pass you by, all that's left is your death. So you might as well live here and now, once again, leading into the hedonistic elements of our narrator. It's a very cool juxtaposition here. And that's pretty much it. We have a pre-chorus and a chorus and part of a bridge that kind of read more as a police officer speaking to our narrator. The chorus says, please, policemen, no head, no heel to toe. Please just let me go. Is this a test? I won't know until I'm under arrest. The bridge says, am I being detained? Am I under arrest? Will you read me my rights? I want my phone call. It comes off as more narrative based, where the rest of it feels, well, I guess in the moment, scene based might be a way, whereas the verses feel more narrative, where we have a narrator talking about stuff kind of disconnected from the situations. And then to put all of this to a dancey swing tune. I don't have a read on that. I think it's one of those situations where you got the music, you got the lyrics, and they work, especially with how many words Will wanted to cram into this 3-minute song. It's got to be something quick and upbeat, and swing is right within his wheelhouse for more upbeat styles of music. That may have been all the thought that went into putting these two together, but it could also be the dance between the criminals and the police. Might be grasping at straws on that one, though. This next one is called Skeleton Appreciation Day in Vestal, New York. Subtitle, Bones. Let's dive in. Oh, I forgot about the intro to the last track, which was very tense and police siren. What wild juxtaposition. I like the vocal harmonies. Feels like a very minimal setup. The drum kit is hi-hat, snare, bass. And even the bass sounds like it's only one string.
Starts as a scheme. Give me all your LSD so I can feel my mind unweave again. They say the beauty's just skin deep, so Anna stands and rents the rancid meat from the bones, bones, bones. Let me see your bones. Well, I don't wanna know if the feeling follows home. Bones, bones, bones. Hell, we're all alone. If I come home, baby, will you show your bones, bones, bones? I can see my bones. Well, I don't wanna know if the feeling follows home. Bones, bones, bones. Hell, we're all alone. If I come home, baby, will you show me your bones? My bones, your bones. Tell me you can't see my bones.
I like bringing it all together.
Your bones. Tell me you can't see them.
The only thing we're missing here that was introduced earlier was the vocal, the choir on the outsides of the track.
Da, 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 da.
Each stomach isn't growling, it's applauding. What sounds are pizza? Coffee, smokes, and cold diet coke. How does that happen? It is the dark. Is this over what?
Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels.
I think that's something that Woolwood does incredibly well, is introduce almost a timelessness to his music. There's definitely a lot of inspiration from older things. I mean, right there at the end, it almost sounds like an old radio show, or maybe an old black and white television show. in those final moments for the outro. But there's also just a general focus on older music too. I mean, even right here, two that are jazz influenced back to back. But pairing those influences with something modern, this type of music, neither of these tracks would have come out in the 50s. Despite borrowing sounds from the 50s and even a little prior to that, it's quite definitely modern music. And I think this pairing of older ideas with modern ideas and finding a midpoint that doesn't really accentuate either but fuses them together into something is what creates that timelessness. It's kind of difficult to put a specific date on his music. I mean, the best you can do, and probably the most accurate, is to say, well, if this was from the 50s, it would be decades ahead of its time, so it's safer to veer towards the other side of the equation. But it's not like, there's music, especially, well, let's just take early nu metal or grunge, stuff that definitely sits within a decade. The 2000s and 90s respectively for those two sounds. When you listen to them, when you listen to the production of that music, when you listen to the chords, when you listen to the guitar tones, when you listen to the vocals, there's something that just instantly dates it. I think classic heavy metal, hair metal, there's a lot of musics that just feel like a specific time. Will Wood's music doesn't always. Maybe never does. I don't want to put that giant blanket term and just say none of it feels like it's in a specific time, because honestly, it's been years since we listened to, what was the first album we checked out? I know we listened to Selfish recently, and we listened to another one prior to that. It's been a few years though. I don't remember every single track, but this is going to seem really weird. Just bear with me for a second. Have any of you seen the 1993-1994 animated series, Batman, the animated series? There's something very timeless about the art style of the city and the technology that they use in it, which is obviously inspired of 1920s America, but it's also kind of Gothic and Art Deco, but there's also some modern technology going on in there, while still everything feels like it's pulled from a 50s television set, at least aesthetically. And it's just a little mishmash of a lot of things. And I think it allows that series to never really feel stuck in the 90s when it was created. That timelessness is what I feel here. And for whatever reason, these two tracks immediately said to my mind, it's like, hey, dude, this is like Batman, which is... Maybe this is what influenced my mind to go in that direction. I looked over at OBS and I was like, oh, there's the bat signal. Why is that here? Oh yeah, I'm wearing it. But yeah, it's like this really cool timelessness. And I think that the end of this track, pulling from that older sound, whether this is a sample from a literal radio drama or radio commercial or old TV show, or if this was created and then digitally altered to sound like it came from this time, it really doesn't matter. It gives that vibe. There's so much of these two tracks so far that point towards the past, while the production of it, the lyricism of it, definitely point towards modern time. In fact, the weird warbly synth sound is definitely a very modern touch that honestly doesn't feel out of place. I think it is because of just how mishmash everything is that we can introduce something like that, which is very clearly modern, to a track that really could have existed anytime. It's a very simple song that pulls from past ideas, and it just works. It doesn't feel out of place to have that. Will Wood does a fantastic job at creating timeless music. Now, that's going to be something that I think has to stand the test of time. Someone remind me in 2035 to come back to this and see if it still feels timeless, or 2045. I didn't realize 2035 was less than a decade away. where have the years gone? Someone remind me in like 20 years to come back to this. And I'm kind of curious if it will still feel timeless to me, or if it'll feel like a turn of the century song. But at least right now, I do get this timelessness out of it. As for what the song is doing, this one is a bit lower energy. It's also quite a bit simpler. We got rid of the sax and we took the rhythm section we had, piano, bass, and drums, and stripped that back down even further. The piano part is quite a bit less energetic, less dexterous, and less filled than the previous track. The drum kit, I think, has been physically reduced. As far as I heard, we had hi-hat, snare, and bass, which is practical. You don't need toms, you don't need extra cymbals. They're certainly helpful. They give you options, but they're not necessary. You kind of have one of everything that you need here. And the bass guitar, I actually thought for a while that it was a wash tub bass. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but you take like an upside down tin wash tub and you put a stick and a string in it, and when you strum the string, it sends vibrations down into the metal tin, or the tin bucket, and then it vibrates and resonates from within that. And you know, it's just like a regular bass. You just change where your finger is on the string to change the length of the vibration. You get different notes that way. I actually thought that's what it was for a while, but by the end of the track, the timbre of the bass felt more like a plucked upright bass to me. Something about the end of that just kind of leaned in that direction. But regardless, it's still a very simple bass line, probably on just one or two strings, given how limited the range of the bass line is. It's a simple track, brings the energy down, and honestly bounces a little bit between more somber ideas and slightly more joyous ideas. Tries to find, I don't know, a duality between the two, or maybe just a middle point. It might also just be how this feels in contrast to track one, which is still in my head and is insanely fun and bouncy and energetic. This being more diminished across the entire song. Maybe that just ends up feeling more sorrowful to me. Maybe that's not necessarily how it's supposed to be read or how it would be read in isolation. But coming off of that first track, this one feels somber. But there is some positivity to it. So what was that thing I wanted to add though? Oh yeah. There's this one part where Will gets this harsh vocal just off on the side. It's like a yeah or no. I don't remember what it was, but it was just some one word, lots of grit, lots of natural compression put on it. And, you know, it's moments like these, I think, dude, you know, Will Wood would actually kill it in a post-hardcore band or a screamo band. I don't know how consistent he can do his harsh vocals, but every time I hear him do a harsh, it's like really solid. And I love how that's in here. I know funk had high-pitched compressed vocals in places, just to add energy to the track or to the song. But other than that, I can't really think of too many genres where they have been a popular style of music and the vocals at times have had natural compression to them, almost to the point of being pure false chord or pure fry scream. And funk, I think funk's really one of the only ones I can think of that had that. Had to look it up real quick. Kind of ashamed. I forgot about this. James Brown, though, is the person I was thinking of. As far as, you know, I don't know if it's fair to call his scream or his yell a harsh vocal, but it uses a lot of the same, at least, you know, I'm not a vocal coach. I don't know if technically like the muscles are all working the same way, but sonically it carries a lot of the same timbre as a fry scream. So, you know, but aside from that, you know, how often do you hear that type of vocal being used in palatable music. There's something very mainstream and palatable about a lot of Will Wood's music, not across the board. Of course, there are certainly some tracks that are less palatable of his. Was it Vampire Suburb or Suburban Vampire, something like that, that I think was quite a wild ride. One of the first tracks from the Normal album. That was the first one we checked out. And that track was called, I think it was Suburbia Overture. And one of the sections of the overture was something to do with vampires. I don't have that in my timestamp for that video. But yeah, that was a wild section. Definitely one of his less palatable works. But I mean, especially after listening to Selfish, I mean, palatability is something that Will Wood definitely thrives within. You can see it on both of these tracks. But yet he also has kind of a really killer fry scream. And to just kind of toss that in there casually in a way that I don't think is going to create friction for your average listener, I think is really cool. But every time I hear it, and this is now 2 tracks in a row where we have heard some sort of extra grit, something closer to a harsh vocal, used usually as an ad-lib, something to throw off into the side of the track as a response to something else that's going on. It just reminds me that I still want to hear Will Wood do some post-hardcore and, you know, really lay down some harsh vocals. He definitely has the flair for the dramatic that I love in a post-hardcore vocalist. And I think that would be very cool. Let's hit some lyrics on this one for Skeleton Appreciation Day. On the surface, this is a song about anorexia. The very first lines: to cut down on my silhouette, my favorite foods are smoke and hearts, while my cracking backbone lacks but backs up all of my false starts. They say that beauty is just skin deep, so naturally, please show me your bones. Later on in the outro, the part that sounded like the radio shows or the television shows, the older ones that I had mentioned, they're actually all about anorexia. A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. Coffees, smokes, and a cold Diet Coke. Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. There's a lot of allusions here to weight loss and, more particular, eating disorders that lead to weight loss. Even the idea of showing me your bones is the concept. I mean, and this is something I really liked. It says, beauty is just skin deep, so show me your bones. Your bones can't be anything beyond your skin. There's no room for muscle, and muscle tends to get eaten and atrophy with anorexia. The idea that all that's left, if beauty is just skin deep, all that's left beneath it is the bone, what's necessary to be there. So I find that to be really interesting. And, you know, this entire thing, show me your bones. This was something that was really big, particularly in the 90s, and something that worryingly is coming back is showing off your bones, being thin enough to have hip bones that protrude. Yeah, this is an interesting track right here. But it's interesting because I don't think that this is the only thing it's going for. Verse 2 says, lumps in your throats and petticoats, your baby teeth would pray for you. The selfish book is always open, and some of the best liars only want the truth. All love starts as a scheme. I had initially read parts of this as self-love, which is what would lead to an eating disorder, trying to love yourself more and trying to find a shortcut to make yourself look a way that would allow yourself to love you. That maybe maybe, probably not, but maybe if you go through anorexia, you just stop eating, you'll eventually look in the mirror and see someone you love. Getting to that point required a scheme, the eating disorder here. Now, the reality here is that most people with anorexia also have body dysmorphia, and they will never think that they look beautiful. They will always be too fat. It's one of the fun things about anorexia. Fun, sarcastically, of course. I don't think I put that into my delivery the way I wanted to. But I started to come around to this track differently. What if it is about human connection? The phrase, "let me see your bones. Let me see your insides. Let me see what makes you up. Let me see what your foundations are." It's done through the lens of physical beauty, but it's actually talking about interior beauty, and maybe even less of that, but interior person, your character. So then what is the rest of this about then? Well, if we look at it through that lens, the idea of cutting down on your favorite foods and focusing on weight loss tactics, such as smoking and drinking Diet Coke instead of actually eating anything of substance, using nicotine to halt food cravings. We're looking at cheap ways to keep you away from sustenance. But if we're not looking at physical sustenance, we're looking at emotional sustenance. We're looking at real human connection here. So in this case, the smoking and the Diet Coke and the abstinence from eating, the anorexia, would be emotional anorexia, keeping yourself from real human connection, chasing down cheap thrills, possibly. Stuff that might satiate your current hunger without actually doing anything to, make sure that the hunger is gone. With the idea of using, nicotine to curb cravings, you're not actually getting rid of the craving itself, you're getting rid of the signal of the craving. You're still hungry. You still need food. You haven't had calories yet to sustain your body. But the craving's gone. The signal telling you to eat is gone. And that's where maybe a one-night stand might be the parallel here, where you really need human connection, and instead you get something that is momentary, that does kind of remove that signal that says you need to interact with people in a positive way, for a moment anyways. And I think that's what this is about. So the chorus here is actually about wanting to get to know someone, to make that connection. I do think that this is undercut. One of the only reasons I even started to look into this direction is because of the second verse, kind of going away from the anorexia perspective for just a moment, but also because apparently it's been stated multiple times by Will Wood that this track is not about anorexia. And I think at a certain point, if you have to tell people that your metaphor is a metaphor, you haven't metaphored right, or you haven't metaphored correctly enough. The information is here, but the song doesn't direct towards it. And I think one of the worst elements of this is actually the outro. Having those weight loss slogans solidifies this song in its final moments. The only thing you hear, the music is gone, the lyrics are gone. The only thing left, the punctuation to this track, is weight loss, typically through some sort of eating disorder. The metaphor is here in the track somewhere, but it's so far disguised that honestly, I don't know that I would have picked it up on my own if I hadn't had seen that Will Wood specifically said this isn't a song about eating disorders. And I do think that it's just a little underbaked. This feels like a really solid third draft here, but it needs just a little work to get that extra oomph to put it over the edge and be an incredible metaphor. It works. I think the connection is there. It's just not executed the way that I would like it to, not at the level I would like it to. But I do appreciate his willingness to go in this direction. And like I said, I do think it is a solid parallel to draw. And an interesting one, too. It isn't arbitrary. We are looking at two health elements. We're looking at emotional and mental health, I guess just emotional health, through the lens of physical health. That's a really great parallel to draw. The connections are already there. Just needed a little more work. All right, next up is called Front Street.
Quick, while she turns her back, slip it in. I'm in a meat pack plant by the corner side. A slaughterhouse apartment with a slice of lime. I'm cruising with the bruises, boozing over you soon. I losing my mind because there's nothing I find. The fat stench of bad intentions hangs in the sweat. I'm in a sauna hot with drama and I'm trying to forget all the masochistic raps or mistakes. I've been ready to God to the bone. You said let loose, but now you lie. By the time I'm pushed like a tightrope noose, the problem is
That's the fun part back there.
and the evidence supports the truth. The city is not real for you. It's to my lady and I'm coming inside. Drink it to me, baby, and what's left of what's right. It's easier to use and lose than never to abuse. You wanna fucked up Saturday night.
I like how it's smooth, but it's also very rigid, very violent.
On Front Street.
It's an interesting, I mean, even the calmness of the instruments with the roughness of the vocals.
Tell me what prevented you from coming down all alone. Because we know you're not afraid. The chastity is Greek to me, the meat is still fresh. The nasty teeth will masticate the bones from the flesh. Since nobody will tell me where these bastards go, I'll see for myself. I think they might go to hell. You said let loose, but now you're locked. While I tied my boots like a tightrope noose.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the 4 on the floor from the drums with the swung eighths on the piano. And that drives a lot of the looseness versus the rigidity. Cool thing over here, both of these were different parts, but very similar. Interesting solo, primarily focusing on downward trends. And we're gonna speed up. Or maybe not. So this has an awkward mix of something danceable. If you listen to just the piano, it's rather smooth and bouncy, but mixed with a sea shanty, which I think was interesting because even before the end of the track, I was already beginning to draw these parallels. I'm not really sure where these parallels are drawn from. I think there's something weighing down, some sort of depressive angle to this, almost as if it's a ballad of sorts that got paired with a dance song, and they kind of just met in the middle as far as tempo and atmosphere and timbre choices go. And I find that to be really wild. There's that clash there, that contrast between these two, but that contrast is also present elsewhere. If you listen to the piano, it has swung eighth notes to it. It's very syncopated. It's very dancey and bouncy. If you listen to the drum and the bass, they're four on the floor. Straight eighth notes. There's clash there too, rhythmically. Is this heavy and weighty? Is this a force pressing down on someone, making them take very rigid steps? Or is it a levity that allows someone to dance fluidly and freely? Is it dexterous or weighty? It is both simultaneously. There's also the smoothness of the song in general, even with the rigid rhythmic devices in there. If you listen to the melodies of the instruments, it's got a nice chill feel to it, very light. It is a little downtrodden, it's a little heavier in atmosphere, but it still has a nice sway to it. But when you listen to the vocals, they're gritty. Much like track one, there's a rasp here that doesn't really go well with the music. High contrast in a lot of aspects of this track, despite still feeling cohesive. It's still a single song. It doesn't feel... I mean, this is probably the most disparate combination of sounds so far. The other two tracks have felt very natural for the different parts to be combined. This one, I do begin to see a bit of a schism between our two concepts, but it's also not clearly stated which instruments have which roles. I think that's an interesting part of this too. The piano is rhythmically dancey, but harmonically kind of dreary. So I can't even point to one instrument and say, well, this is the one that's carrying the lighter side of things, and this other instrument carries the heavier side of things. So So I find that to be really, and once again too, if we listen to the notes sung and the rhythmic devices within them, the vocals are very bright and poppy, but it's the timbre of them, the production of this instrument that ends up kind of betraying that. We have multifaceted components to our instruments, both in what they're doing and how they're doing it, how that is being produced and sent to our ears to hear. We also have a general descent in whatever this solo instrument is off to the left. We had an extended 30, 40-second solo, and while there were a couple of dips back up, it very clearly went down the entire time. After its solo section was done and the vocals came in, it continued to play under that, rising back up in pitch only to descend again. It made a huge leap so that it could continue its downward momentum. And all of this culminates in a spiral towards chaos. The end of this track is just noise. We dip the tempo quite a bit, so there's that weight bearing down again, really focusing on that side. Harmonically, we're focusing on drearier sounds than before. There's nothing in here that is dancey or smooth. It is just heavy and rigid and filthy. Honestly, if you listen to the instruments, we have group vocals, but they're not doing clean harmonic stacks. We're looking at group vocals now. There's no specific pitches being sung to create beauty. It's just a group of people singing notes that are generally similar pitch, so the end result sounds harmonious to an extent, but by no means are these people all singing together. It's like if you go to a concert and, thousands of people are all singing together, you can kind of hear a centralized pitch, which is going to match the song. Everyone knows the song. I mean, that's why they're singing it. But is everyone singing in key, in tune? No, absolutely not. That's not how group vocals work. And that's kind of what's happening here. It's not dissonantly distracting, but it's not consonantly harmonious either. While all of these voices are going on, there's so many instruments doing their own thing. I mean, aside from the bass and drum, which are primarily just keeping these quarter notes down, the piano is trying to be bouncy again, despite it being a much slower tempo. We have this other instrument off on the side over here that's kind of soloing away. And the vocals together are singing a core line, but temporally and harmonically out of sync with each other. It is not chaos in the way that the song's about to fall apart, but it is fairly less structured than any of the tracks have been so far. And of course, this devolves into sound, noise, just a big ending. But opposed to the classic big rock ending where you just have a soloist going and the drummer's going all over the kit, and you can feel that everyone's soloing simultaneously in disparate but a collective way, this is just noise. Nothing here is really working to elevate this general idea other than a general idea of disconnect. To say that this song is in constant de-evolution and in constant spiraling downwards away from harmony in multiple facets, I mean, that would be an incredibly accurate read of this track. The downward spiral is indicated only a minute and a half into the song. Through the solo instrument, we already have this disconnect between the feelings of this track, rhythmically and harmonically. We already have this idea of clashing, and the end of the song just takes these ideas and pushes them to an extreme. That's what I get out of this. Let's hit some lyrics on it. All right. So this track appears to be about sexual assault. There's several references to spiking drinks. The end of the track the phrase "better cover your drink" is repeated multiple times. The first line in the track is "quick, while she turns her back, slip it in," talking about spiking a drink there. And I think generally this is about a date rape in general, but there's a couple of things in here that I don't know quite line up with that. We'll get to them in a second, though. Kind of a weird thing to segue into, but I really love the phonetic use in this track. The opening verse says, "I'm cruising with the bruisers, boozing, I'll be a suitor, losing my mind because there's nothing I'll find." Taking that F says, "the fetid stench of bad intentions hanging in the sweat." So we have stench and intentions. We also have fetid, so that same E for fetid. And then from sweat, we have the S. It says, "I'm in a sauna, hot with trauma." So we have sauna, hot, trauma, all of this working with the concept of hanging in the sweat. You sweat when you're in a hot sauna. And he says, "I'm trying to forget," to rhyme that back with sweat from the previous line. The way that the rhyme scheme jumps around between interline rhymes, end of line rhymes, and then working alliteration into there as well, and tying things together thematically too. It's really well done. And this is what I was talking about. I don't know why I didn't go into any specific examples on the first track, but Will does a fantastic job of basically bringing the wordsmithing element of rap into singing. And it really is sort of the best of both worlds at times, especially on faster tracks like track 1, where we kind of get some of that more rhythmic cadence that goes into it too, the faster delivery. But even in something like this, you can really feel some of that poetic skill being worked into the track itself. So the chorus says, "Here's to my lady, and I'm coming inside. Drink to me, baby, and what's left of what's right." What's left of what's right, I think, is really interesting, because we have the first half of that, "drink to me and what's left." So everything that is left over from this event, but also we have what's left of what's right. So we have left and right put in here. We're talking about morals. Morals do come up a few times in this. It seems like if our narrator, it's not really a narrator. Yeah, okay. If our narrator is wanting to go through with this sexual assault or not, it seems to me that a lot of this says they are. There's a lot of elements in here that certainly point towards that, but they seem to be having second thoughts, and this concept of left and right, of morality, it pops up a couple of times, which I think is interesting. In fact, the outro of the song, right next to the repeated line of "better cover your drink," is "last call for morals." So we have that double entendre there of what's left of what's right. It says, "It's easier to use and lose than never to have used you at all." A little bit of an inversion on "better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all," although a really screwed up version of that. It says that this is a fucked up Saturday night, and that, at least from the narrator's perspective, it's good times on Front Street. So they seem to be disconnected from their actions and view this all as positive, which also they are getting their thrills through this too. So it is good for them, I suppose, from their perspective. But the idea that they understand that this is all messed up, that this shouldn't be happening, that they should not be doing this at all, is kind of in there a little bit. I think that plays into the moral side of things, but they also don't care. They immediately jump from that line into good times on Front Street. Verse 2 seems to be primarily about just kind of talkingness, maybe a way of trying to convince themselves that this isn't wrong. The narrator says, "Tell me what prevented you from coming downtown all alone, because we know you're not afraid." This is interesting. as if to tell the other person that they know what's actually going on, when maybe just coming downtown alone is all that it takes to not want to do it. Being alone, just put yourself at risk, especially if this song is about raping women. So, yeah. He says, we know you're not afraid, just kind of gaslighting that. He says, this chastity is Greek to me. So he says he doesn't understand the chastity of all of this. He says, but the meat is still fresh. And then we shift over into something a bit more cannibalistic. Says the gnashing teeth will masticate the bones from the flesh, really giving this act, I think, the visual brutality that helps people understand it a little better, especially in the culture that we have in 2015 when this was written, and still currently today, unfortunately. That rape in general is just kind of something that gets brushed under the rug. So what is it? Brock Turner, the rapist, had the boys will be boys defense. So, and that apparently worked. What did he get? Like 6-month probation? That was ridiculous. So, yeah, I can see where this line, I think, creating a very visceral visual image, which isn't wrong metaphorically, but is definitely not what I think people picture. It helps really sell the devastation and violence of the act. So that's what we have here. Now, I mentioned that there is some things that don't line up with this, and I've been trying to figure this one out. In the bridge, there is a sample that I didn't catch at the time, but is from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Well, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It comes from season 5. And it is a moment where one of the characters, Dennis Reynolds, goes back to his old fraternity and gets absolutely abused by the new kids there. He thought he was going to walk in as royalty, as an alumni to the fraternity house and just dominate the entire scene. And he didn't. He ended up getting tased and hazed and all sorts of stuff. And he's here back in his bar ranting to his friends about how they completely disrespected him. A part of this is an unintended physical altercation, which kind of lines up. It's a bit of a looser thread to tie, but the other thing is that it is about frat boys. It's quite possible that this is about date rape culture within college housings, particularly frat houses and sorority houses. I don't think I know enough about it. Front Street doesn't mean anything to me. That's one of the only phrases in here that I mean, it's the name of the song, but I have no context for that. It's the only way I can view this sample anywhere in line with the rest of the track. Otherwise, it's completely out of left field. So I wonder if that's what this is, really honing down this problem into a specific sector. But I don't think I have a strong enough grasp over all of this to really commit to that read on it. Right. Next up, we have the shortest track, I believe. This one's barely 2 minutes long, called Aikido, Neurotic, Erotic. Depending on what this sounds like, I may just let it run into the next track and talk about them together.
I apologize for playing with your eyes, but I'm obsessed with you. Rolling out of bed,
that didn't feel like 4 for some reason.
'Cause I'm obsessed with you. Rose mirages into vases, I don't stand a chance. Quiet girls with wrist corsages, cordial silence, I can dance. Holding breath by graveyard, salt over my shoulder, I'm obsessed with you. Rainbow walking cave heart, never will be bolder, I'm obsessed with you.
The bells are a nice touch.
Chicken scratch Rembrandts of silence makes me think. My insides cry, try the finest while then am I at my brink.
So this chorus is just 2 chords.
I told Dr. Dillis to prescribe an illness, but he said his schedule's filled with children who need Prozac, Prilosec, Lojack, triple second Lexapro for second guesses drugs that heal. So we can touch instead of feel. Oh, I apologize for playing with your eyes, but I'm obsessed with you. Bite your tongue and smile, stick around a while. I'm obsessed with you. Neurotic, erotic, neurotic, erotic, neurotic, erotic, neurotic, erotic. I'm obsessed with you.
Nice way to save that and bring it back down for this softer ending. All right, this is going to be real short, but I do want to talk about this because it's the first time we have avoided a verse chorus format. This track is completely linear in a sense. It's about growth, interestingly enough. What I had taken as a verse and chorus, the more stripped down guitar and vocals versus the fleshed out clapping and bells on top of it, wasn't actually a verse chorus structure. It was actually a first layer of variation. So if the bass line is the chords on the guitar and the vocals, the second layer is the clapping and the bells. Now the third layer is interesting because it's actually a variation on the guitar part itself. See, at the very beginning, there's 3 strings being strummed, a chord held out across them, but picking each note individually. If you listen, you'll notice that the second and third highest notes don't really change. It's just the root tone that changes against the 2 higher pitches. When we go to the third section of this, though, we're full on strumming. Just strumming the chords here, no longer trying to build a melody of doing chord shaping to imply harmony through melodic device. We're just straight up playing chords. Beyond this, though, we have humming, a reduction in the vocals. We're going to have contrast in just a moment as the vocals come in very powerful and full-bodied, something that is a contrast to the vocal work previously, not just the hums, but also the first 2 stanzas. So the vocals have had a sonic variation here. I don't think that there's too much going on here that alters the composition of it, but the production of the tone itself is different here. There's some bravado, and with that, we also hear the strumming is very sharp and abrasive. There is a harshness to the attack of all of these notes. No longer does it have that delicate plucking that we had at the beginning, but we have full-on strumming here, and quite loud too. Everything is rising and escalating until we have that final note at the end of the track being held out by the vocals. The rest of the instruments cut out, and the vocalist finds a way to bring this energy down using a little bit of a run on this, I think it was an ooh sound, and bringing it down till he can return back to the hum and the light guitar work from the intro. This was interesting because the entire song is linear growth, expansion on a core idea. And instead of ending where we would expect, at the peak of this variation of changing and escalating, stopping at the top, right when we get there, we take 8 seconds. Willwood brings the energy back down and kind of creates something cyclical out of it, finishing the track up exactly where it started. That's about it to this one. It has a warm, inviting feel to it. I think just the guitar and vocals, no fancy sounds, no interesting characters, no grit or rasp, just some clean singing on top of a warm guitar for most of it. I will say that the end feels a bit more aggressive, but at least it starts off fairly inviting, and harmonically it stays that way. The chords and the simple melodies put on top of the chords don't change. A lot of this kind of comes across in a very romantic kind of way. The production of it changes though, that's for sure, and by the end of it, it is overbearing. Let's dive into some lyrics on this one. We'll see what's going on here. All right, this track is about being obsessive to the point of neurosis. It says, I apologize for playing with your eyes. That's a wild phrase. I'm assuming that there's some sort of metaphor for visual elements there. It says, but I'm obsessed with you. Rolling out of bed is morning in my head because I'm obsessed with you. Says, I hold my breath by graveyards, throw salt over my shoulder because I'm obsessed with you. Rainbow walking cave heart never will be bolder. Interesting wordplay. They're talking about rocks and using the word boulder as if, braver. I do this because I'm obsessed with you. I draw chicken scratch Rembrandts of your likeness. Rembrandt is an artist, well known. And chicken scratch is terrible handwriting, so these are just poor imitations of a well-known artist's work. So he just draws sketches and pictures of this other person because he's obsessed with them. That's what this entire song is about, being obsessed with someone. Now, there's another part to this though. Verse 3 switches everything up. We actually move away from this I do this because I'm obsessed format that a lot of the lyrics are focused on. It says, I told Dr. Tillis to prescribe an illness, but he said his schedule's filled with children who need Prozac, Prilosec, and Lojack, Triple Sec, and Lexapro for second guesses. This is wild. First of all, the complete format change. But second of all, it's not to prescribe medication. He wants the doctor to prescribe an illness. The doctor says that they can't because he needs to give children Prozac and Prilosec, which are drugs, but then Lojack, which I believe is a car theft alert system or something. At Triple Sec is alcohol. I don't know what Lexapro is, but my gut says that's also a real drug. The neat thing about living in America is we get commercials for medication. As ridiculous as that is, all three of these terms are drugs that I've seen. Well, Lexapro I'm still kind of iffy on, but I'm pretty sure I've seen an ad for that. And Prozac and Prilosec, I definitely have. So yeah, 2 medications, 1 possible medication, an anti-theft device, and alcohol, all needing to be prescribed by a doctor to children. Wild. I have no idea what to interpret from that. He says, though, that these are drugs that heal so we can touch instead of feel. I like that idea that touching and feeling are 2 separate things. Feeling is a sense. It's just something you do, while touching is something that is intentional. But then verse 4 brings back, I apologize for playing with your eyes. It says, bite your tongue and smile. Stick around for a while. I'm obsessed with you. Neurotic, erotic. And I wonder if, because Will Wood loves layers, this is about being obsessed with neurosis. Being obsessed with the is neurosis a mental disease, mental illness? I don't know. But the obsession that neurosis causes, being your fixation, is neurosis itself. It's a cyclical thing. Some sort of, there's also the romantic side of this. I spoke about the music feeling romantic, but obviously there's a lot of lines in here about going through caves and walking on rainbows. One line I didn't say was a rose in vases, quiet girls with wrist corsages, cordial silence. Now we're talking about something that feels very prom-like here, a dance of sorts. There is a romantic element to this. Is this about the romanticization? That can't be the way that's pronounced. Of mental illness. I don't know. Once again, I feel like Will is right on the cusp of having an interesting metaphor here, but it's just explored in too shallow of a way to drive the idea home. There's just enough hint here to make me second guess. Is it really just surface level, or is there more? I start to see some frayed threads that I might be able to tie together, but they're not really coming together in anything that makes sense to me. Now, there is the other side of this equation. This is the second track on here that I've mentioned that the metaphor is just not as strong as I would like, and it's quite possible it's not a Will Woods writing skill that comes into, but my deciphering skill that comes into play. So it's always that as well. All right, next up we have White Knuckle Jerk. Let's see where we go with this one.
She's got the eyes of a snake, loading dice, raising stakes from a cash cow. I'll be a burn victim, hypothermic, so damn hot. I come to smiling like I'm blacked out in Glasgow. I woke up in the name that I wore last night.
Got that clave going on in the percussion. That syncopated 3-hit strike against the 4-beat bars. Oh, jeez. Will has a way with words, doesn't he?
She's got the touch of an anesthesiologist. Please put me under. Because I tremble with the notion that there's something unsettling in my head on the miraculously. I wonder how I woke up in the middle of my surgery.
I like the flute line over there. The falsetto kind of dominated the section, but very dramatic. just stupid, this song. Having the piano texture stack under,
just say that it's on me.
all right, Will. This is a silly little song. We have a very sultry sound in general, just coming from the syncopation and cadence from the rhythmic element. We have a standard 4/4 here with that syncopated clave giving us those 3 beats underneath. The piano and bass give us, again, a very sultry atmosphere to this with the chords chosen, the harmonies of this. And the melodies are very smooth. Not harmonies, melodies. They're very smooth when you listen to either the piano or Will, because quite often they are frequently playing the exact same thing, which turns this a little bit into a dance. We haven't really heard any track at all this entire album where there is texture layering. Occasionally we will have pure harmony where we have vocal stacks or something like that, but that almost every time is just Will harmonizing with himself. Here though, we have an instrument harmonizing with Will, playing the, I don't know, I don't think it's harmonized. I think it's the same exact line. I think there might be an octave difference, but it's the same line. So we're really just getting the texture difference between the piano and the vocals. And it turns it into something of a little bit of a dance, which is pretty cool. And it also matches the very dancey vibes going on with this track. Very sultry dance too. Aside from that, we do have the flute over here, which I really adore. It has really tiny bit parts in this track, but they're so good too. It was the I'll Never Know part when we were escalating the pitches, and I think it was the second time through, and the flute was just doing these really quick, rapid changes between 2 pitches. Actually, I guess technically it'd be a trill given how fast it was being played. But it's just 2 pitches here, and then the next time, oh, I don't know what's going on. I can't hit that pitch. I don't know why. Anyways, yeah, dude, just phenomenal. I love that. It's such a little idea, but it adds so much. And like I said, that third one was overshadowed by Will going into a falsetto and really, projecting on that last pitch. It is the highest part of the track. It was a peak for sure, but I really think the flute over here was really what was selling me on the whole thing. Like, dude, this chorus is just so catchy though. This whole song's catchy. And I think this is interesting too, because Will does a pretty good job of writing catchy music all the time, but there are certainly some tracks that just stand out. And they're the ones that I think are going to get stuck in my head anyways, more often than any of the other ones. This is one of them. That opening of the chorus, just a gorgeous, both crescendo because they are rising in volume as they go up, but also just the arpeggiation up and where it jumps, how it jumps. Solid track. The lyrics are ridiculous. Let's get into them. Interestingly, we have another track about obsession with someone. This one, though, I think actually is about someone, whereas Aikido could possibly be interpreted as an obsession or romanticism with mental illness. This one does seem to speak about a specific someone. Now, it is also laced with so many horny and sexual puns in here. The chorus is just one big pun. And the finale of the song just turns that on its head removes the double speak and just is very blunt. This is almost like a dumb internet song I would expect to see on YouTube, or I'm trying to think of any places that Newgrounds, maybe predating YouTube, or where we would have found dumb stuff like this. And it is absurdly comical from that angle, especially for me. Anyways, this is my type of humor right here. Anyways, though, the verse 1 says she's got the eyes of a snake, loaded dice, raising stakes from a cash cow. This is really interesting, just the wordplay here. I'm not entirely sure what it's trying to say, but the idea of eyes of a snake and loaded dice. We have snake eyes, loaded dice. We have gambling terms here. Raising stakes is one, but then we also have raising stakes, S-T-E-A-K-S, from a cash cow. So we have a little bit of some wordplay there too. It says, I'll be her burn victim. Hypothermic. Interesting, because that would be intense freezing, but we were just talking about being a burn victim because she's so hot. Now, he says, I woke up in the name that I wore last night. Not sure about that, but the waking up is a key part here. It says he woke up to the sound of an empty bed, and it's ringing in my ears just like sweet nothings from the voices in my head. He woke up, he's alone, but he still has these memories, these thoughts, these images of this person. I do like the use of sound here. It's the sound of an empty bed. It is ringing in his ears. It is sweet nothings from voices. It's a really nice sonic parallel that are used all throughout these three lines here. So anyways, there's just someone that he finds incredibly attractive. Possibly he was dreaming about them, whether they're real or not, and he woke up realizing that he's alone. The chorus then says, where do you get off being so beautiful? Just how dare you be so attractive? But also, we'll see, there's a double entendre here that we'll explore in the final line of this track. Now, verse 2 moves away from our earlier metaphors and focuses on a medical side of things. Says she's got the touch of an anesthesiologist. Please put me under. The idea that she can knock me out with her looks alone. It says, I woke up in the middle of my surgery and I watched them botch my heart. Really interesting phrasing here. Everything has been done metaphorically. I'm assuming this is continuing the metaphor. So what would we look at if this was a metaphorical botched heart or a messed up surgery? If the heart isn't physical here, in which it is pumping blood and designed for life, then we're looking at the emotional side of the heart as a metaphor for the way someone feels. After all, when a relationship ends, you say that, they broke my heart, right? So this would be someone who has destroyed this person's emotional core. Maybe they are just that beautiful that they don't know how to feel this way about anyone else, which I think leans into the obsession. That no one else can reach this level of this person, whether it is purely a physical attraction, or maybe it is even they really enjoy the character, who they are as a person. Although the chorus definitely leans on the visual side of things. But it's just completely rewired their ability to find other people attractive. It has messed with their heart. I think that's what he's trying to say here. Now, this next line says, only the second worst thing that I could have thought was, this won't have to end if it doesn't start. Yeah, I get that. We'll see in the bridge that he just doesn't think he has a chance with this person at all. And I think that this right here says it won't have to end if it doesn't have to start. I don't have to face rejection. I don't have to face the end of a relationship. I don't ever have to lose this one. It will never become the one that got away, because I will never even attempt to have a relationship with this person. They just feel that it's completely that this other person's completely out of their league. They have no shot. But I'm wondering, I've been trying to figure out what the first worst thing might have been, and I don't know. Maybe the first worst thing would have been to have tried at all. Because honestly, not trying is not a great idea either. I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen? They say no and move on with life. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious what Will was thinking with that line. What specifically, because obviously it's left to interpretation. It's designed for the audience to fill in the blanks, but I'm curious what Will's intention was there. Maybe when he was writing this, what his first thought was. The bridge says, "I'll never know what it's like to love you." Now, this final chorus, like I said, a lot of this is done through a lens of puns and wordplay and double entendre. But here at the very end, that's all gone. We reframe the chorus to, "Where do you get off being so beautiful? My heart is bluer than my balls." And this is great too, because we're talking about a lack of oxygen in the heart. We've already talked about it being botched from the metaphorical surgery earlier, but also the fact that they aren't getting any love out of this relationship because it isn't a relationship. They're not actually going to try to go out on a date with this person. As we saw in the bridge, "I'll never know what it's like to love you." So they're feeling frustrated. We'll use that word. But the very final line is, "Where do you get off being so beautiful? Just say that it's on me." Oh man, Will Wood is a horny little guy. But it is funny how so much of this has interesting wordplay until the end, and he's just like, "No, if you haven't picked it up yet, this is what the song is about." And there's just something so comical about a song that's already so ridiculous, and then just, pushing it past the envelope just a little more. That's a fun. And then of course the wordplay of the title of the track, which is "White Knuckle Jerk," which originally I'd kind of assumed it was maybe about a really intense person, just always clenching their fist. They got white knuckles, and normally people like that aren't great to be around. They're a jerk. But yeah, probably not about that. Probably about what our narrator is going to do now that he's woken up alone in his bed with these thoughts in his mind. Next up, we have "Cover This Song," which feels like a demand. Maybe I'll have to cover it when I get done listening to it. Let's see what's going on here. Dude, this whole album's been really syncopated.
Say you still hurt the woman you were, and you haven't turned into someone who could never love me again. 'Cause you never broke
A bit cliche, but it fits.
Now it works, but only enough for just to suffer that hurt. What can I say to convince you to slip back into my arms again? I won't do you no harm again. Let me tell you that I'm sorry and that I'm just a little bit crazy about you, just a little bit out of my mind.
Lots of really nice like ghost snare rolls in here. There's subtle drum play.
What can I say to convince you or do to make you agree with me? I don't need you to be with me. Just try to remember what you see in me. I'm just a little bit crazy about you. Just a little bit out of my mind. Just a little insane without you. Please come back and be just a little bit mine.
This is probably the poppiest song so far.
Just a little bit mine.
It still has a jazz underbelly to it, but it's just nowhere near as prominent. And as soon as I say that, we get a piano solo, of course. I'm really digging the drum work though.
I'll be here singing until our heartbeats might slip back into that rhythm again. Whether it is or it isn't the end, who cares? God knows that I could use a friend. I'm just a little bit crazy about you. Just a little bit out of my mind. Just a little insane without you. Please come back and be just a little. I'm just a little bit crazy about you. Just a little bit out of my mind. Just a little insane without you. Please come back and be just a little bit mine. Whoa, yeah. Just a little bit mine.
That was unexpected. I was just thinking about how that reminded me of the bookends to Selfish, opening and closing track, where it felt like Will was on a stage, him at a piano, and singing to an audience who kind of didn't really care for what was going on. A lot of them were having their own conversations. The music was kind of viewed as background music, and it set the frame story for Will just sort of being very vulnerable to an audience, at least from a narrative standpoint of that album. And I wonder if this track didn't kind of inspire him to develop it further into what would become Selfish. Because that finale certainly captures a lot of the same energy that we heard on the tracks Self and Ish. But yeah, aside from that, this track is very straightforward. It, like I mentioned, is one of the poppier tracks on this album too. It does have a jazzier chord progression, and we do have that piano solo in there. It is still based around a jazz rhythm section with a vocalist at the front of it. But as far as roles and what each instrument is doing, it's very poppy, especially with the right hand, at least, of the piano playing very similar things to the vocal line. It's not doing the same melody stuff that we saw on White Knuckle Jerk, but it is... I'm sorry. I can't, it's going to have to become track 5 or it's going to make me giggle every time. It isn't quite the same playing the full melody, but it does accent the same key notes that the vocals do. And it is quite a bit more in line with what the vocals are doing than we've seen in previous tracks, where the piano is usually doing its own thing harmonically and rhythmically as the rhythm section rather than a supporting element or an accompanying role to the vocal melody. So I do think that's kind of interesting, but it does throw it further into that pop realm where there's just less fresh things, less new things going on, and that there's more overlap in ideas. And it does create a song that is generally unified in what it's trying to do, although honestly all these tracks have been fairly uniform in their atmosphere and emotion. That is something that we have seen consistently in a lot of Will's work. So that just kind of lines up here, especially some of this being his earliest, I think, 2015. I gotta look that up. I think Normal album was prior to this, and then this would be the second album. I'm going to double check that when I break for lyrics, though, especially since we are halfway through the album now. So now's a good time to look up context and extra information. I will say, though, that the drum part in here really surprised me. The drums have been fairly functional throughout this album. There's been some nice fills here and there, but nothing to really point towards and say, you know, this is really driving the song. This is a key element of what makes the song interesting or unique, of what gives it character. This track, it absolutely is, though. The drum work in here, while not necessarily flashy when you compare it to some of the greatest drummers in the world, it certainly is fresh and interesting from moment to moment. I don't think a single part in here has a 4-bar phrase that is identical to any other 4-bar phrase in the track. There is always ornamental, embellishing works and drum fills in here that continue to reinvent what the drummer is doing. The core pattern is consistent throughout the track, but there's always some interesting, tasteful addition to it in order to help spice things up and make it different from the last 10 seconds of drumming. And I found this to be really interesting, especially on those triplet fills, where the drummer chose to pretty much just make melodic drumming. It kind of stood out to me the ways that, again, it's a stripped down set too. I don't think I heard toms, did not hear crash cymbals. Maybe there was a ride in here, but hi-hat, snare, and bass, that's primarily what I got out of this, and yet it still feels distinct and adaptive. It doesn't feel like it's stripped down or restricted in any way. The drum parts consistently feel new and fresh throughout, despite not having a large kit and multiple timbres to work with. If you want a bassy sound, you got one thing. If you want another sound that isn't metallic, you got your snare. If you want a metal sound, you have one cymbal to work with. Now, granted, the hi-hat provides a variety of timbres based on openness and closeness of the two. You can mute it easily with your foot. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do with a hi-hat that you wouldn't be able to do with a single cymbal like a ride or a crash or a china, but it's still, you know, you got this one tool. You don't have a variety to work with. And I don't know, I just really love that. Lots of cool ghost notes in here, some nice rolls to keep the energy moving forward despite the lower energy track. Still had some nice momentum to it. And, you know, Will Wood just being Will Wood on vocals. The piano solo I thought was a nice extension of the themes, but it didn't really feel too distinct from the melodies written for the vocals on this. It was just a little jazzier and a little less poppier as far as note choice goes, but it had rising and falling elements. It directed us through it, but the vocals do that really well too. And it wouldn't surprise me if the piano melody here was adapted from the vocal melody or vice versa. They share a lot of elements between the two of them. It is interesting though. Well, no. Yeah, I don't have anywhere to tie that together. Let me look up some lyrics and some additional context for this. So with Will Wood, we've kind of gone in the inverse direction. We started with their second to latest album, the Normal album, 2020. Then we listened to 2016's Selfish, and now 2015's Everything Is a Lot. When we next return to them, we will check out In Case I Make It, their 2022 album. So I think this is good. Maybe not the best way, but I do think Normal album has been my favorite so far. Selfish is easily the most contained, and this is definitely a first work. There's a lot of ideas in here that seem a bit disconnected. We do have a general fixation on someone. This is the third song in a row when we get to the lyrics where we see a fixation on someone else. Although track 2 kind of went in that direction too. Show Me Your Bones was more about a general feeling of companionship, but also companionship, wanting to be with someone. And Front Street is kind of the dark side of that, as well as, well, yeah, dark side of that, wanting to be with someone and taking that instead of earning it or asking for it. Six Up 5-0 then stands up as the thematically out of place song on this album so far. It's wildly different and stands out quite a bit. So in a lot of ways, this does feel like a first album. And something I was reading too, where did this go? Let's see, this is the first studio album by Will Wood, released in May. Unlike the second and final release credited under the Tapeworms name, Selfish, this doesn't have any overlapping theme like that one would. It's just a compilation of songs that were written between 2011 and 2014. And yeah, it's interesting that there still is a general theme throughout most of it, though, wanting to be with someone, wanting to be vulnerable and connected to other people. Granted, we're only halfway through. We still have 7 tracks ahead of us. It's quite possible this theme deviates. We deviate from it quite a bit, but I mean, right here, the first half, it's very clearly fixated on human connection. And with that said, this track is about losing someone and wanting them back. The chorus says, "I'm just a little bit crazy about you." That line sounds familiar. We're definitely retreading themes here. It says, "But please come back and be just a little bit mine." The pre-chorus says, "What can I say to convince you to slip back into my arms again? I won't do no harm again. Let me just tell you that I'm sorry." So it's a breakup song right here, but wanting the other person back. And in fact, the pre-chorus says, "Let me tell you I'm sorry," and that, we go into the chorus, "I'm just a little bit crazy about you." It's got a lot of 2000s pop country vibe to that. There's some prominent country singers from the 2000s that I could have seen and probably did write a song very similar to this with these same ideas of being crazy about you and now having gone crazy without you. Yeah. Although I think in those cases, it's probably a little bit more colloquial term of the words crazy and insane, where Will Wood, because of the other tracks on here dealing with mental illness, the use of crazy here feels a bit more specific, feels a bit more intentional. Because we do have obsessing over people as a core theme through a lot of tracks on this. The first verse, though, it feels so much like a country track to me. It says, "Say that you're the woman before you fell out of love with me." It says, "You never broke my heart, but no, you fixed it, and now it works, but only enough just to suffer that hurt." This is so country coded. I don't know what it is about it. Does anyone else hear this? Is it just me? But like specifically like a 2000s country, definitely not the bro country we would see in, the post 2010s, and not the earlier 90s country that was a bit more drearier and had more bluesy components still in it. This is definitely that pop country revival that Nashville was going through at the turn of the century. And I don't know, it just feels like it should be. But anyways, that's what this song is about. There's no variation, no deviation, no cute little metaphors here. That's it. It's just, you used to love me and you don't, and how can I fix that? That's it. It's not my favorite track on the album. Lyrically, I do like the musicality of it. The drum work's still pretty neat, but it feels thin for a Will Wood track. And I think the fact that we've checked out other songs in a similar vein that have done this better musically and lyrically just makes this fall a little flat. And I honestly wonder why it didn't get cut, being that there is so much overlap with other tracks. I mean, I guess the idea here is that it is different because it's about an end of a relationship rather than wanting a relationship, but the core idea of being alone and wanting to be with someone is still embedded pretty deeply into this track. It is called Cover This Song, and I went and looked and saw, and as far as I could tell, there's like 4 whole covers of this track on YouTube, which is really surprising for something that's been out 11 years and is not only a popular internet artist, but the song is literally called Cover This Song. I may have to make a cover of this just so that I can add to the albeit small pool of covers of this. It kind of blows my mind. Maybe this track just isn't that popular though. All right. Next one is called Thermodynamic Lawyer Esquire, which is, again, wild track titles. Liar, liar? Very abrupt staccato 3/4. You can feel it in the slower chord too, or that faster 3. That little fermata there, oh, that was tasteful. Okay.
Knocking the pieces the fuck off the chessboard, insisting that she's won the game.
The guitar line and the bells over here, really nice combo. A little bit of Phrygian thrown in there. A lot of bit of Phrygian thrown in there. What a strange. Okay. Seems to feel very strongly about that phrase.
Absolutely reprehensible behavior.
And, you know, I was talking about Will's ability to add grit and stuff bordering on harsh vocals. We almost got a bleh there at the end of that track, which is absolutely bonkers. Yeah, this is fun. This kind of takes me back. We've had quite a few tracks that have kind of reduced the complexity over the course of this album, and this kind of brings us back to that same energy of track one. And part of that may be the character put on display too. We definitely have raspier, grittier, Tom Waits style Will Wood here, but there's also so much complexity in the instrumentation too. While I think the rhythm section has reduced its complexity a little bit, the drums here are back to being a bit more functional, same with the bass. The other instruments are then given room to explore other ideas. When we listen to the bells, the guitars, we had brass in there, I think, for a section, the piano, and how all of this is bouncing around each other, being ornamental, supporting and playing against the vocal melody. This is a song that, unlike the past few, which have kind of been reductive in what they're approaching, where we craft an atmosphere and then that's really it. We don't need to explore anything else. This is a track that says, okay, we have the atmosphere. How can we change the small things about this? And this is exactly what I was talking about with track one, and even a little bit of track two as well, is just the ways that these songs can stay fresh from moment to moment. Every part of this song has this dark carnival thing going on with the 3/4 cadence, the waltz going on, and the heavy blasting sounds on those downbeats. But it's also unique from moment to moment as well. And some of that is from the vocals, which Will has done a fantastic job keeping these songs interesting with the vocal delivery, melodies, and rhythmic cadences alone. But this is, again, a return to an instrumental focus of keeping the song fresh. And I love how at every moment I can just say, hey, what's going on over here? Oh, that's kind of interesting. It plays off the vocals wildly. Oh, I heard something. What's going on over here? Like there's an instrument doing something cool over here too. And they're bouncing around too. We might have guitar and bells. And as soon as they're done doing their little counterpoint, now the guitar is over here and it's doing something totally different. And it's just a song that it's mildly chaotic because it doesn't want to sit still, but that also makes it really interesting, especially juxtaposed to the previous couple of tracks. I mean, Cover This Song, track 5, and Aikido were very focused in what they were doing. And Aikido only had a 2-minute runtime, so sure, that's fine. But the other two tracks, they were pushing towards 4 minutes each and had very little variation within them. So I do think that this is a good place to reintroduce some of that energy and complexity that we saw at the beginning of the album that we've slowly moved away from. And if this was an intentional decision in the track listing for this, I think it is an incredible choice, very insightful to have an album that kind of starts at its peak, pulls somebody in really easily from the start, slowly dwindles downward, which kind of fits a lot of these themes of downward spirals into obsession that we see on this album. But it also allows the album to have momentum downwards and to shoot back up. I'm really interested to see where this last half of the album takes us. Are we going to do another downfall? Are we going to stay high in the middle for a little bit? Is it going to be a bit more whiplash? Less of a linear movement, more of rapidly jumping between different intensities. It's going to be interesting to see where Will takes us on this journey. But I think so far this has been pretty good. For, what is this, 20 minutes? Maybe 25 minutes? I think the downward spiral has worked really well and allows this track to have contrast. It does feel, in a lot of ways, very similar to track one, but it is distanced from that quite a bit, both by time and by sounds, atmospheres, and styles, that I think it stands out well on its own, and this is a good place to put something like that. Yeah, I think that's about it for this one. Let's hit some lyrics. Well, if you didn't pick up from the last 20 seconds of this track, it's about someone that our narrator doesn't like very much. The repeated direction for them to go die. It's and the way that it's said, you can feel the seething anger. And that's what this song is about. It is about, interestingly, coming off of the track Cover the Song, it's about the end of a relationship, but not wanting the other person to come back at all, in the slightest. The chorus says, "All that I see, absolute entropy as the chemical bonds fall apart." I really like that. That is a wonderful way of introducing a little bit of chemistry into the ideas of the chaos around his world. It says, "Well, it seems she broke me, but she did not break my heart because she could not break my heart." The rest of this track is putting on full blast, assuming this is a real person, which I kind of find it hard to believe. It's definitely an exaggeration of a person, and that person might have been real. But all of the ways that this person made the narrator's life miserable. Talks about them being a liar, a manipulator, being verbally abusive. Even says at one point that she will judge books by the covers and then shamelessly spoil the endings for everyone else anyways. That's one of the more absurd takedowns of this person. There's a line here that says that she foams at the mouth and blames some poor illness for it, and that she knocks the pieces off the chessboard, insisting that she's won the game. So this kind of lines up with the entropy, the chaos that this person is described to have in their vicinity at all times. It says that disease is her primary language, but that her words are so absurd and garbled and gruesome that it sounds like a transmission from Apollo 13, that she has no apologies and only requests misery for those around her. Now, as the song goes on, we begin to hear more about who this other person is and what our narrator wants for them. In verse 3 is where this starts to kick in. It says, "I'll have no rest until I've twisted her chest around my knee." The bridge fantasizes possibly the other person on their knees begging for another chance, possibly, and our narrator having his hand up ready to slap her. Choosing not to, and telling her to kill herself for the sake of all humanity. It's rough. It gets really rough here at the end. And I do find it interesting that in an interview with Will Wood, he says that the lyrics in this song are career ruiners. It's a perfect reminder of every regret I have in life, end quote. I think that's interesting. People, humanity, us humans, typically change, evolve, and grow over our lives. I say typically because not everyone does. But to be human is to change. It is to grow. It is to make errors and hopefully look back upon those and think, well, I wouldn't do that today. Hopefully not because of the repercussions alone, but, at least having some foresight into it. Do I think that these are career ruining lyrics? No. They're something. They're certainly incredibly aggressive towards a someone, hypothetical or not. And the ending is incredibly raw. I think in a light, you could say they are tasteless. But I do think it's really interesting to hear that Will regrets writing this. I can see that from a certain perspective, absolutely, in the fact that he's not this person anymore. Again, humanity and growth. But I think it would also erase who he was at the time. I'm not usually one for regretting, well, I don't know. Regretting that you did it, I think, is different than wishing you never had done it. And I think when it comes to art, I don't know, it's getting a bit philosophical here. Is it better to do something and be authentic and regret it later, or to never do it in case you regret it later? I think I'd err on the first one of those, but there's certainly going to be cases where there's, as much as I champion all art, to allow art to explore even the darkest parts of humanity, that's one of things art does well. There's certainly some art out there that is too powerful or impactful that I wish didn't exist. So, I don't know. I think it's one of those gray areas. There's no clean answer here. But I do think it's interesting that Will has mentioned this, that this song in particular, of all the songs that he's done, is the one that stands out to him as just something that embodies the worst parts of who he was when he was, in 2011 to 2014 when this stuff was written. Very interesting. All right. Next up, we have Red Moon. Let's dive in. Little Santana.
The sun sets soon. Indeed, we'll bleed in my horizon. The crescent rests, tending to the west, waxing to the rhythm, writhing in my chest. That crack between the watercolor sky and sea is the corner where you're born in the mist. I might ride the tide, 'cause I'm full as a pulse round my feet. Towards your stolen light, while I'm held in your slight gravity. Well, I walk the equator, chasing the light. Little do I know it, all that's close behind.
I love the hi-hat work. Oh, no, that's not hi-hat. That's shakers. There's a hi-hat under it. Yeah. We've kind of returned to that more sultry sound of track 5. Oh.
Nighttime, please hide my eyes, so the men of me won't watch me stare. Teach me to make moonshine, and we'll get drunk on the spirits of the air. When I walk the equator, chasing the light, little do I know it, all that's close behind. I might remember or might assume, but I only turn around every once in a red, red moon. I said I only turn around every once in a red, red moon. The constellations form in
The playfulness between the sax and the piano.
the condensations almost down, and erases on the side.
there's a little bit of klezmer in here, but not a lot. All right. This is another one that I think probably could have landed on the cutting room floor. Musically, it's just so similar to track 5. We still have a 3 against 4 polyrhythm in here. It's not quite as strong as the clave from track 5, but it's still presenting that slightly syncopated dancey vibe mixed with a sultry atmosphere to all of this. I will say that musically, I don't know if it's because we've already listened to something similar to this, or if it's because this is 4 minutes of kind of one idea, but that doom dum digga digga doom dum digga digga doom dum on the piano, it really became tiresome for me. It's just way too much of that in this track. And, for the first time on this album, I found myself thinking, well, surely this song must be done. I've kind of had my fill of it already. And we were just at the 2-minute mark. I was like, geez, it's only half over. That's not to say it's not an entertaining song. It's just not an incredibly strong track in this album, and I've already heard something like it fairly similarly. This is what I was talking about with tracks 1 and 7, where 7 was a very similar sound, but half of an album later. There's been plenty of space between the two, but I think it's a nice time to return back to that. But for this one in particular, it's just kind of too soon, even given that it's been, like 40 minutes now because of all the, talking and analysis segments that I have, that for me it's still been quite a bit of time and it still feels too close. So I don't know, this one just didn't quite grab me. I don't think there was anything in it that really stood out to me. Will is doing his gritty Tom Waits voice again, a little less so. There's some showmanship in it, a lot of projecting from the back of the mouth with kind of getting that wider sound to it, but adding the grit on top of that in places. It's certainly a little distinct, but it feels like a midpoint between his clean singing and his gritty singing. And I mean, that's kind of what we had on track 5 too, a little bit. So I don't know. This one just didn't click with me. And I feel like every bit of it is just ground retread, which, I mean, that's not a bad thing. There's certainly albums out there. I have had albums I loved last year that I put on my album of the year list that were just albums that did one thing very well for the entire runtime. And, if I'm in the mood for that, that's what I want. But with something like Will Wood, where each track is just one idea, there's not a lot of dynamic qualities in most of these songs, they kind of have to stand out a little bit. When we have albums that are just one idea, it's an alt rock track, an alt rock album, and every song on there is just very hazy. It's got the alt rock grunginess to it. It's got a little bit of grit to the vocals, aggressive drums. You have to get by on something else. Usually in the world of rock, it's going to be riffs, it's going to be drum fills, it's going to be the things that help create distinctions within the atmosphere. So the composition itself is going to have to be what stands out. And I don't really get that here. This song feels compositionally and atmospherically incredibly similar to track 5. And there's just nothing on it that really stands out to me that says, this was worth putting on the album. Now, there is the lyrical side of things for this too, and it's quite possible that we have some themes on here we haven't explored elsewhere. And maybe it'll make a lot of sense for those lyrics to be set against this type of sultry dance music. But if not, I don't know, this song is just kind of the weakest so far. And I think the album's been fairly solid. Even with the diminishing complexity that we had on the first half, I still found every one of those tracks not just worthwhile on its own, but a great complement to this album as a whole. Particularly from the musical side of things, because as we explored lyrically, there's a lot of overlap. But I don't know. This one just didn't click for me. I'm curious what other people think too. Like I said, if I had heard this in isolation, I think it's a solid song. I like the way some of the instruments work with each other. It talked about the sax and the piano having a really cheeky conversation at the end of the, was it second chorus into the bridge or something like that. That was nice. Gave me a good chuckle, and I like that composition there. But on the whole, there just wasn't a lot, for me personally, that stood out on this album. But that's just my opinion, too. Maybe other people really enjoyed this. Let's hit some lyrics. All right. I've changed my opinion a little bit on this. Track 5, I think, works with the sultry vibe, but this is the one that really clicks. I like this because there is an allure to the music. There's a romantic quality to it. And I think that this song really embodies the allure part of that. I mean, granted, track 5 does too, but more in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. This, I think, is legit. This is rooted, and comically, given the title, this is very grounded. Red moon, I believe, is a play on the term blue moon, from the phrase once in a blue moon, something that happens rather rarely. Now, I looked it up because I've never seen a blue moon in my life. I thought it was just a thing people said, but apparently under some circumstances, the moon can appear blue. I wonder if that's where the phrase comes from, but regardless, I think it is still a rare occasion, where blue moon comes from. So what would a red moon be? Unfortunately, I don't quite know. I wonder then if it's just supposed to talk about something that is red in general, not necessarily an inverse of a blue moon, but what red could mean. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, the verse talks about a red moon that keeps on rising. A sunset that bleeds into the horizon, and a crescent that rests tethered to the west, waxing to the rhythmic writhing in my chest. Very great use of both rhyme and phonetic sounds here, as we have the R, the W, and the WR sound all mixed together here. It is a bit of a tongue twister to say. I'm actually really glad I got that through on my first time. And we'll actually continue to see this as the next line brings up watercolors. But it just talks about the process of the moon. Now, the pre-chorus states, well, we'll get to that in a second. The chorus says, I walk the equator chasing the light. Little do I know it orbits close behind. I might remember or might assume, but I only turn around once in every once in a red moon. So we have this moon, and he's chasing it across the equator. He'll, of course, never catch it. And it's right behind him. All he has to do is turn around and actually run towards it instead of chasing it, and they would collide. But he doesn't. He futilely chases it. Now, it does say that there is a light that he's chasing. I think this is really interesting because the pre-chorus mentions that the moon has a stolen light, which is true. The moon does not emit its own light. It reflects the light of the sun. So we're not even chasing the truth of this. We're chasing a reflection of something else. That adds another layer to this. Verse 2 says, tell the truth. What are you hiding behind that face? If matter's in, then I might space out. Why can't I take in what you've been dishing out? Why do I reject while you endlessly reflect, while you're projecting your perfection astounds? I really like this. It speaks about both the realities and the falseness of the moon. It is really there. It is still something to gaze at, to feel in awe of. The moon can be beautiful. But it is beautiful because of something else. The sun, this isn't a falsitude. It doesn't make the moon any lesser than. But people can perceive it that way. And I really like this idea. Once again, we have a fixation, we have an obsession over an other, this time a moon. And I think the moon represents something good, maybe even a person, just something you want in life. We have a person who ends up chasing it, never taking the most direct path, never taking the smartest path, just following behind it. And when they don't catch it, they deride it. Calls it fake, asks what it's hiding, what the truth actually is. Why are you just reflecting? But our narrator is also nervous. After the second verse, it says, "Nighttime, please hide my eyes, so the man up there won't watch me stare." And in some gorgeous wordplay, teach me to make moonshine, and we'll get drunk on the spirits of the air. Of course, moonshine is alcohol, but it's also the shine of the moon. It says, teach me to be like you. You don't make your own light, and yet you still reflect others, and you're gorgeous for it. How can I reflect others and be gorgeous? And I really like that because it's about more than just connection. It is connection to this one, but understanding how they connect to others. And that would allow you to connect to those around you too. To get drunk on the spirits of the air. Once again, spirits could be a term for an alcohol, but it's also people. If you believe in the idea that we have souls and when we die, the souls go somewhere else, the idea of the spirit would be the trueness of someone, their actual self beyond their physical shell. To be drunk on that, to connect so clearly and fully with someone's spirit, not with who they are, not with who they project themselves to be, not with their mask, but with who they are on the inside. To be drunk on that, the true human connection. This is just a gorgeous section right here. And it's one line. Teach me to make moonshine, and we'll get drunk on the spirits of the air. Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, I love this song. It's about being in a dance with the moon. Coming to realization about it. And wanting more out of life. The music lines up with that really well. If this had come before track 5, I think that would have worked better for me personally because I would have gotten to hear the serious side of this style of music. And then when it came back later, I'd think, oh, this sounds like Red Moon, but it's also comical, it's tongue-in-cheek. So the reprise of this style doesn't really sting as hard. Also, track 5 is a little bit shorter, but I think the comedy aspect of it really helps sell the length of the track. And it doesn't quite feel as long because it's easier, at least for me it was, to hear the words. I don't know what it was with Red Moon. I had a tough time listening to the lyrics on this one. A few of these tracks, I'll hear lines, stanzas, even fullness of the song. And in other ones, I pick up very little lyrics at all. So I don't know what's going on with that. It's probably a me thing. There's more things to focus on instrumentally. I'm just paying attention to the vocals less. But I do think that if these were inverted, I would not have had such a negative reaction to hearing this again. Simply because, again, the comical side is just very clear on track 5, and it overrides the reuse of the sound and the general composition. Next up, we have Lysergide, Daydream. I think we're gonna have to look this word up later and see what it means. Let's dive in though. Yeah, gorgeous work right here.
Ooh, I wanna be in the picture on the postcard, pouring pictures in the backyard by the garden we tend. Ooh, I wanna be where the crickets chirp for me, frogs that fractal at my feet, and by a dirt road dead end, where the matches burn like candles, no locks on the door. We could blow the seeds off dandelions, wish for nothing more. Where the sunrise comes early, but the night's still very long, and the constellations mirror kissing dewdrops on the lawn. I feel the grass between my toes.
This is the most
already.
stripped down kit we've heard so far.
Ooh, I wanna be in a place I can call a place to get away from
The
it
piano
all.
line mimics a lot of the vocals. Interesting chord progression on the vocals. Nice bits of tension worked into the piano bits.
Ooh, I wanna be in an autumn pastel landscape, an odd attractive escape out 2 miles from downtown. Ooh, I wanna be where it's always apple season, underneath the dancing trees where we know up is down. Where the television's broken and the campfire's smoking, and we're hopeful for tomorrow cause we know we had today. We're laughing and we're joking with no criticism spoken. If the clouds come out and drown the town, we'll still go out and play. I can feel the hands to hold already. Ooh, I wanna be in a place I can call a place to get away from it all.
Oh man.
Well, I know the day is far away, and if it comes, it will not stay. But I can't chase the flavor from my mind. Well, this is my Lysergide dream. It's not a plan, not half a scheme to find that place.
Lysergide.
Not to there, tired and worn out feet. No, I don't believe there's a place I can go, a place to get away from it all. No, I don't believe there's a place I can call a place to get away from it.
All right. One of the more stripped back tracks, and I don't have a lot to add to this. We're just going to go over it real quick so we can continue on with the album. Drum is just snare and bass. And a lot of that is syncopation. Doom to ka doom to ka doom to ka. No cymbal work in here at all, no toms. It's just very straightforward on that. The bass guitar is 4 notes in total. We hear a little bit more on the more interesting chord progressions in 2 places on this album, but for the most part, it's just 4 chord progression with the bass outlining it, and every note is on 1 or 3. It's a very slow moving bass line. What this leaves us then is this very stripped back rhythm section with a piano accompanying a vocal line. This again reminds me of some of the more stripped back tracks from Selfish, such as Self and Ish, that just happens to have some drum and bass to go along with it. The vocal line frequently pairs up well with what the piano line pairs up well with what the vocals are doing. There's some extra flourish going on in the piano, and sometimes they'll explore their own line alongside the vocals as counterpoint. But through so much of this, they're just kind of playing the same thing that the vocals are singing in the right hand and putting chords in the left hand underneath that. We do have two other things that show up here, and that's the laser phaser synth thing that happened in the middle, and the vocal harmonies, which filled in the sides really well in the two places they showed up. It is a rather minimal track, though, that focuses on one general sound with minimal instrumentation, and really allows the vocals to tell their story without any distraction. There is a little bit of dreariness to this, moments where kind of injects some sorrow into it, but generally there seems to be a neutrality to it. It's fun, it's bouncy, it's upbeat, but it's not joyful. I hear joy in it, but also it's mixed with negativity. It is mixed with sorrow. It's something that the song feels like it wants to be excited, but can't. That's how every bit of this track ended up feeling like for me. So let me look up what Lysergide is and what the lyrics were to this track. And here we have a rather tragic song. Lysergide comes from LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide. So we're looking at a hallucinogenic daydream is what this track is about. And so much of it is positive fantasy. Verse 1 says, I want to be in a picture on the postcard, pouring pictures in the backyard by the garden we tend. It says, I want to be where the crickets chirp for me and frogs that fractal at my feet by the dirt road. That's really interesting, the idea of fractaling frogs. Fractals are like an infinite mathematical pattern, so that's kind of wild. But the idea of having a backyard where you can just have a party or a barbecue, pouring pitchers of iced tea or lemonade, and the southern part of me comes out. I know it's always like, I mean, I'm thinking, what else? You go to the city and have a party, you're still pouring pitchers of tea, right? You know. What else would you pour? You're not going to pour pitchers of wine, pitchers of sodas, pitchers of lemonade, right? That's not just a southern thing, right? Even though like that's like southern right there. Ice cold sweet tea and some lemonade. You don't get more southern than that. But I think that's just like, that's what you pour. What else would you put in a pitcher? Anyways, though. I like the soft rhyme between pitcher and picture. Pitcher and picture. I don't even think I'm saying them differently. Like I feel like I am. I'm doing something on the interior that I feel like they're the same. But when I listen to what I'm saying, I feel like they're the same words. A picture, something that you would see. A picture on a postcard. And then pouring pictures in the backyard. Am I saying the same word? Anyways, I like that wordplay there. I think that works really well. He says, I want to blow the seeds of a dandelion and wish for nothing more. The old childhood thing of if you find a dandelion, make a wish and blow on it. He says, I have nothing more that I would want. I would wish for nothing. He says, I want the sunrises to come early, but the nights to still be long. Later on says he wants to be in an autumn pastel landscape. An odd but attractive escape about 2 miles from downtown, where it's always apple season, and he can dance underneath the trees. It says that, I want to be in a place where we're hopeful for tomorrow because we had today. We're laughing and joking, there's no criticism, and if the clouds come out and drown the town, we'll still go out and play. He just wants positivity. He wants an idyllic, utopian future. Unfortunately, the final chorus says, I don't believe there's a place I can call, a place to get away from it all. I don't believe that place exists. So these are all dreams, fantasies that he has fallen into accepting to be no more than a fantasy. Something maybe to want, but unobtainable. And I think that really cuts through the heart of this track. There is a positive element to this. There's joy in these words, there's joy in the music, but it's just not isolated. It's always paired with something more diminished. And a death of a dream is pretty diminishing. The next track is called The First Step. Like a backmasked Catholic chant.
You can say I'm blasted.
Why is this giving me a sitcom theme song vibe from the 90s?
21 in the college crowd. Laughing a boozing bastard. They calling me Edward, 40 hands, I can't touch anyone. With an enemy like me, who would need a friend? Never mind, I'm drunk. Well, I've had enough now since the blackout started. For an EKG for the broken hearted. I try to see the glass as half full, but I'd probably just drink that too.
I think it's this melody right here. It also reminds me of a Randy Newman style of melody writing.
Call it an Irish goodbye, and I hope I don't choke on my vomit tonight. Well, if it did a battle, I so better be better than biting the bullet and bettering myself. Sorry if I slur.
Dang.
Take my anxiety and my sobriety. I killed two birds with one stone. So if you see me, please take my keys. I don't wanna be an organ donor. Well, we've had enough now since the blackout started. For an EKG for the broken hearted. I try to see the glass as half full, but I'd probably just drink that too.
I love bringing the energy down to go into the chorus.
Well, I'm going down and I'm taking you with me. Yeah. I'm bringing the water to the horse. So bring me the hair of the dog that bit me. Yeah.
Aw,
So I
dude.
can clone it and have a little more.
Yeah, a strong playfulness in this solo. Sax off to the side though.
Well, we've had enough now since the blackout started. 40 kg for the broken hearted. I try to see the glass as half full.
It almost sounded like there was a kazoo.
I try to see the glass as half full.
What is that buzzing?
Glass half full. I'd probably just drink that too. I'd probably just drink that too.
What? I was prepared. I was like, okay, I got some stuff to talk about. I feel like this is one of the more dynamic tracks on the album. We're going to talk about that. We're going to bring up that buzzing sound and the counterpoint that goes on in here, and talk about how like dancey music is a consistent theme throughout this album. Syncopation is a pretty strong component, and then A tavern singing 99 bottles of beer. How does that work into anything that I just listened to? Now, granted, I did hear the phrase glass half full in there somewhere. Maybe this is a song about drinking. Maybe alcohol is a theme on this track, even if alcoholism isn't just a general. I don't know. I'm completely thrown off by that. And the song's short. It's like 3:18, and I feel like the 99 bottles part was like 20 seconds. So we have a sub 3-minute song here. They threw a lot into this track for it being less than 3 minutes long. Granted, just barely. It's like 2:57, but I mean, it's not 3 minutes long. And yet there's a lot of ideas thrown in here. Now, the further we got into it, the more it felt like a late 80s, early 90s sitcom theme song. I think it was the sax over there with the large classic drum kit sound going on. We have full tom set. We have cymbals in here. This is not the stripped down drum set that we've heard for a few tracks. And the run from the snare to the high toms to the low toms, something about that and the way it was produced, just again, it's a very Full House kind of theme song vibe. I don't know, dude. But it is fun. It is very light. I think that the tavern song at the end, 100%, that just fits. It's a fun track. It feels loose. And it doesn't match some of the negative energies we've heard in other tracks. I'm sure lyrically it's going to be heavy because most of these songs have had a negative bend to them. But, it's just generally upbeat and positive and fun, loose, just, singing with a bunch of your buddies at the pub. Yeah, okay, that lines up with that vibe. So, there are some synergistic components here. It still comes out of nowhere, though. That is a wild transition there. Especially since the back half of that ending, I don't think everyone was on the same number. Alcohol definitely does something when it comes to counting, but everyone started on 99 and then chaos after that. But yeah, dude, the song is fun. It's bouncy, it's dancey. It has a lot of dynamics to it, and I thought this was pretty awesome. The pre-chorus into the chorus brings the energy down quite a bit so we can ramp back up into it. We have some cool chord progressions on here that add in a little bit of spice while still embodying that fun, bouncy energy. We have so many extra instruments on this. I mean, we have the sax over here, which is kind of ornamental at one time, and then interestingly kind of lead, but not in the production. During the piano solo, the sax over here is going crazy, and we have this nice duet between the two of them, but the sax is so quiet and distant that it almost feels as if it's kind of been excluded to go along with the pub metaphor. It's that one friend of yours that's just overly loud and obnoxious, not enough to ruin the friendship, but after like 2, 3, 4 drinks, it's kind of too much, and just kind of put him in his own area of the room, and you still hear him shouting from the corner though. Oh man, that's I like it though. The sax contributes really well. I wish it was more centered in the mix, but I'm sure Will's got a reason for it. The piano solo was nice and well done. Once again, nothing too spicy or interesting from a musician or a compositionally technical standpoint. All the solos in this album have been generally what I would call functional. They push forward the themes of the music that's already been shown through the atmosphere and the lead melody, which is primarily the vocal work. And don't really do anything to stand out on their own. They just further the song. None of them are bad, but none of them have really stood out to me either. And this one gets lumped into that, though I do really appreciate the sax working alongside it. And I do think it is one of my favorite solo sections of the album. Yeah, just a generally fun, upbeat track, and just really laid back. You know, we've had some upbeat tracks that are very bouncy, require a lot of energy to groove with them, but because of the infectiousness, you want to anyways. And this one's not that. You just kind of go at it at your own pace. Just kind of chill with it. And again, I think it fits this whole bar vibe they got going at the end, which I may be improperly extrapolating too far than it should be, but I do feel like a lot of this track is embodied in those final moments, even if it is such a distinct flavor on its own. Simply put, this is a track about being an alcoholic. Verse 1 says, "You could say I'm plastered because I hit the wall." That's pretty good. Being plastered is a colloquialism for, well, I mean, another one is being hammered. I don't know why we have so many construction words for this, but it just means being incredibly drunk. It says I lost count after 21. So he's been drinking for so long, he's kind of lost count of how old he is. He says, with an enemy like me, who would need a friend? Never mind, I'm drunk. To recognize that he misspoke. With friends like me, who would need enemies is the phrase, but he mixed up enemy and friend, and he's like, don't listen to me, I'm just drunk. The chorus, though, explains a little bit of why. He says, we've had enough power since the blackout started for an EKG for the brokenhearted. This is interesting. The idea of electricity and a blackout immediately talks about a power blackout, but to be blackout drunk is also to drink until the point that your memory fails. And he's doing this because he's brokenhearted. He says, I try to see the glass as half full, so maybe this is an opportunity for me to better myself, to meet new people, but I'd probably just drink that too. The glass half full to him is just another reason to consume the alcohol. Verse 2. This has the really fast delivery in it, and I'm going to slow it down because I don't even think I could do it the speed that Will did without stumbling over the words, but also because I want to talk about these, and that's obviously the reason, so that we can all understand what's being said. I'm slowing it down for y'all. Yeah. Says, well, I bet a bottle of brandy so bitter'd be better than biting the bullet and bettering myself. The idea here that I could stop drinking and try to improve myself, but honestly, even as bitter as that bottle of brandy is, it still would be better than that. That would require self-reflection. It would require change. It would require hard work. None of that sounds alluring at all. And as much as I don't like brandy, I still find that to be a better option, is what he's saying. And I think that's, it's true, it's real. You know, quitting an addiction is a tough thing. And I think that's represented really well here. But I also love how technically impressive this line is. And immediately after he says, sorry if I slur. Like, yeah, maybe if you were drunk, you wouldn't be able to do that. But Will, you pulled that off immaculately, which I think is the comedy there. The irony that this one line is delivered so perfectly. He says, I'll take my anxiety and my sobriety, killing two birds with one stone. Drinking gets rid of the anxiety, and it also gets rid of sobriety. Why not do it? It's efficient, it's effective. He says, but if you see me, take my keys because I don't want to be an organ donor. So that's that track, which, concluding with 99 bottles of beer on the wall, seems fairly appropriate. Next up, we have Jimmy Mushroom's Last Drink, Bedtime in Wayne, New Jersey. This is a short track, may end up running it into the penultimate song. Let's kick it. I love the sound of that vibraphone. Using hard mallets on it too.
Salt on the glass, coke on the night. Is there anything left to escape but life? I didn't sign.
Relaxing beach vibes, and starting it with Salt on the Glass.
Made today lose what yesterday won. Hope that tomorrow I'll get something done. I'm gonna run out of time.
So this is about stressing about time while being relaxed musically.
To die. I'm more afraid of what might happen first. Either way, it's not like we'll get out alive. I can't say that I know which one is worse. Everything's useless, especially songs. I think the truth is that everyone's wrong. Still sing along, long time.
Did he just diminish his own craft?
I might keep looking for nothing to find. They say keep trucking, it's all in your mind. Jimmy, you're fine. End of the line, gaining speed, wrapping trees. But I'll tell you what, I'm not afraid to die. I'm more afraid of what might happen first. Either way, it's not like we'll get out alive. I can't say that I know which one is worse.
I don't know what it is about staccato humming, but it sounds ridiculous. Yeah, that one's fairly straightforward. Laid back vibes, bells as the primary instrument, but focusing on anxiety of time. So there's the contrast there. You say wait? Oh, Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp here in Loathing in Las Vegas. Is that Will? Oh. We're wrapping us up on some energy here. That is a kazoo, isn't it? Kazoo, guitar.
Sentimental value of the city around you is the needed of the leaves, the completely what's done, yeah. I'm rolling like thunder. I'm a snot-nosed pothead playing with matches. A rod spot, I'm old with my hands on a cactus. My mouth is dry and my eyes are red. I'm chewing on sand 'cause the desert's in my head. My eyes are taking action. My eyes are gaining traction. My eyes, no more distractions. I'm done relaxing. I am a chemical reaction.
Yeah, okay.
Stretched out view is fat
the lower energy finale there is really interesting. It took something that was incredibly energetic, maybe even chaotically momentous at times, and ended on calm, but not positivity. I don't know quite how to read that final moment, but it's semi-melancholic. Even though the words, I think, were positive. He said, good things happen to me. But it just doesn't feel joyful. There's almost a lament going on there, which seems counter to the lyrics. Wow. I really enjoyed that track, though. Might be my favorite on the album, though recency bias is certainly kicking in there. It's energetic, it's bouncy, it is the rockiest, maybe even punkiest track on the album. It's got that 2/4 snare accent, which is funny because I'm pretty sure all of my head bobbing was on 1 and 3. So I felt the accent on 2 and 4, but I wasn't grooving on that. That's very interesting. But it also adds a lot of Latin harmonic flair into the mix. And we did have some Spanish classical guitar off on the side for a small moment in there too. And we have that syncopated beat that I associate with reggaeton throughout this track as well. And I was stoked, man. The first 15 seconds just had me engaged. I was like, dude, this is great. It ended up going in a rockier direction after that intro, which I will admit lost me a little bit, but I came around to it and really enjoyed what this track was doing. And I think that all the energy and electricity of this track being subverted in the final moments and kind of going more towards a show tuned finale, it caught me off guard. And I want to read that in a positive manner, that it's a cool contrast, but honestly, I don't know yet. I'm going to have to see where the lyrics take me on that to see where I ultimately sit with the way that I understand the ending. But just the sheer shock of it already kind of has me leaning positively towards the finale, even if I don't think it made much sense at all. A lot of this album has been setting up expectations and then subtly, in small ways, going against them. It's been about schisms. It's been about contrast. So definitely within his wheelhouse to do an odd choice like that at the end. The guitar solo was wild. Quite enjoyed that. Both rocky in its electric guitar, a little bit of bluesiness thrown in there, but again, having some Latin American vibes in there too. So that was awesome. And what else did I want to touch on that there was? Oh yeah, we had 16th note picking on the electric guitar at the end with a lot of effects on it, which were slowly blurring into like a gazy sound, which I thought was pretty cool because electric guitar just hasn't really been a prominent sound on this album. A lot of the times we have piano for the harmonic information or acoustic guitar. So I thought it was pretty cool to not just have electric guitar, but also distorted electric guitar and distorted to the point that we're kind of addressing an atmospheric component. And you know, I think this is a really important thing to bring up with Will Wood is there's a lot of overlap on this album. Dancey rhythms, upbeat vibes, lots of energy, lots of electricity, infectious and theatric vocal deliveries. These are pretty consistent descriptors of this entire album, but you know, every track is also kind of doing its own thing. Some a little less so. There's some overlapping musical ideas, but for the most part, every track has its own identity. There's all sorts of different instruments being used all throughout this album. There's all sorts of different inspirations being used both in isolation and in conjunction with other styles and inspirations. Will Wood is just an incredibly varied person musically. And I find that that shines through in his music too. I will say that this is probably the least exploratory album. Every track feels fairly safe, but it's also his first, and I think that it does showcase a wide enough sound to showcase all of his inspirations and the types of music that he enjoys or has listened to and honestly understands. A lot of this, as I've described about Will Wood in other albums, is on the fairly iterative side, but it still covers such a wide gamut of sounds that not only do you need to listen to them to know they exist, to be inspired by them, but you also have to understand how they work in order to replicate them. So it is no small task to do something like this. And even right here at the start, you can see where a lot of this is coming into play, where a lot of these different disparate sounds are bleeding through into his sound in general. And while most of it, I would still say, is very theatric, very show tunes, it is still really cool to see where everything else in the more popular culture side of music tend to blur into that more theatric sound. And I think this was a really good showcasing of some sounds that we haven't heard yet, while still carrying a lot of the hallmarks of what makes a Will Wood song a Will Wood song. Quickly, just going to talk about Jimmy Mushroom's Last Drink. Not a lot going on in here. Right from the start, though, we got water washing up. I think we have seagull sounds. We have I called it a vibraphone, but I actually think it was a marimba. And then we have some sort of, I think it was a metal one. So maybe a glockenspiel and a marimba in there. Either way, we have two distinct bells. One's a bit brighter, one's a bit warmer, and what they're playing is very relaxing and chill and upbeat. And it's just, I mean, this is relaxing beach vibes right here. And I really love this. We don't get too much of this on the channel, probably because there's not a lot to dive into musically. I wouldn't call this incredibly complex. And a lot of the music within this style of music it's all the same. They're all borrowing from the same tropes. This song, not really too different in that regard. It is very tropey, but I mean, that's the point. We're trying to create beach vibes. Well, how do you implant that into people? Well, you do the things that people think about with beach vibes, and that's usually bright, chill, laid back, and bells or smaller guitars. And there's so much music within this one genre, but a lot of it's just kind of doing the same thing. You get too far outside of the circle, cross the line a bit too much, and you kind of lose some of these elements. You lose those pop culture connections. And actually, we ran into this not too long ago. We checked out a track that was chill, very relaxed, and right there it is. It was called Tokyo Reggie from Masayoshi Takanaka. And very straightforward track. I don't think I had a lot to bring up on it. It does what it does, though. Fun, bouncy, relaxing. I think that one did have some interesting stuff in the bridge that kind of deviated from things a little bit. But I remember the A section just being very generically relaxing beach vibes like this. And again, I don't really have much to add to this, but I do think it's kind of cool. But there is a juxtaposition too, where I'm fairly confident the lyrics are about time anxiety, which is the exact opposite of relaxing on a beach. Or it might be the anxiety of relaxing on a beach, that you don't have time to relax. Why are you relaxing, bro? You have so much to do. So, I do like it though. And I think it is a great way to introduce the energy and electricity of track 12. The penultimate track being so crazily just dancey and high energy and momentous. Bring the energy way down to ramp it way up, and then we'll see how they wrap up this final track. I think this is the longest too, 5.5 minutes. Yeah, 15 seconds longer than Front Street. So Save the longest for the last. Let's do some lyrics on these two and then we'll wrap this album up. All right. Jimmy Mushroom's last drink is about someone who they try to escape life. The beginning, I got the salt on the glass line, but I think I was chuckling about that and the beach vibes and missed the second part of this where it says, and coke on the knife. That's a really interesting parallel there, given salt and coke's similarities, but both being things that you would put on something else. So he says that he uses narcotics and alcohol. He says, is there anything left to escape but life? Using these to escape responsibility, pain, pretty much everything within life, except life itself. He says, I didn't sign up for this. May today lose what yesterday won. I hope that tomorrow I'll get something done, but I'm just going to run out of time. Just kind of hoping that things kind of get worse, but maybe get better. He says, I'll tell you what, though, I'm not afraid to die. I'm more afraid of what might happen first. Either way, it's not like we get out alive, and I can't say that I know which one is worse. I think that's interesting. He doesn't know if life or death is worse. Life must not be worth living. And I think that speaks a lot to good old Jimmy Mushroom here. His outlook on life and what life has been like for him. Verse 2 says everything's useless. And he thinks that everyone's wrong. They keep telling him to just keep trucking, that he's fine, but he's not. It's the end of the line and he's gaining speed, wrapping around trees. I don't know how common of an idiom that is around the world, but at least down here in southern United States, that's the phrase of getting in an accident and probably being killed, but your body slamming into a tree so hard that it wraps around it. So, you know, this is Jimmy possibly dying, or at least alluding to dying. Maybe he is literally gaining speed in a car heading towards a forest, or maybe just metaphorically his life is downhill. It doesn't say, though. The rest of the track is the choruses, simply stating again that he's not afraid to die, but he doesn't know if living is any better. It is a fairly bleak track that is paired with relaxing, calming music. And I think that speaks for itself. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on in track 12 here. Chemical overreaction is the first part of this. As listed here, the second part, compound fracture, is the final stanza. It's the finale of this track, the final, 20 or 30 seconds or so. The chorus to Chemical Overreaction says, I eye my eyes. I'm taking action. I'm gaining traction. No more distractions. I'm done relaxing. I'm a chemical reaction. Which sounds like someone trying to take back their life. And a lot of this album has been fixation on drugs, on getting by, on losing sight of everything else, on people, on joy, on positivity, on relationships. And this could be the song that says, it's time for me to focus back on me. But the two verses don't really lean into that at all. The first verse says, better bet I'll never settle. I never could rest till the sunrise dies and sets in the west, creating a bit of this western, deserty, cowboy kind of thing going on. He says, there's a rattlesnake bite and a bullet in my chest. I won't stop to draw a line in the sand because I'll be picked apart to pieces by coyotes. I'm a lizard in the hand of the medicine man, who's the wizard of the land on wild peyote. I mean, it just talks about being out here where everything can kill you and that you can't stop for anything because then you'll die. Whether it's coyotes or the rattlesnake bite or the bullet that's in his chest or the medicine men or any of this, that everything's trying to kill them. And if we have to take this away from the literal line here, which I think Will Wood just never really speaks in literals. If I have literally taken anything at face value on this album, I was probably wrong in my interpretation of it. I think this is saying that life in general is full of distractions, ways to take you down a peg, and even occasionally ways to kill you. Life is deadly. And then the chorus says, I've got my eyes on my eyes, which is just a crazy phrase. But, you know, I initially took it as, you know, I'm focusing on being focused. But also, if your eyes are on your eyes and your eyes aren't on the prize, it's like you're focusing on the wrong thing. But he does say that he's taking action, gaining traction, removing distractions, and they're done relaxing, which is a really nice line coming off of Jimmy Mushroom's track. He says, I'm a chemical reaction. Again, implying that all these things within are exploding, creating something hopefully positive out of all of this. Verse 2, though, says that he's in a city where sentimental value surrounds you, that it's deleted, obsolete, and still completely will stun you, but that he's tripping like a klutz, rolling like thunder. He's a snot-nosed pothead playing with matches. He has his hand on a cactus and his mouth is dry and his eyes are red. So there's still substance abuse going on here, which if we go back to the LSD track, you know, again, this isn't an overarching narrative, but these themes of substance abuse are in the album, and here we have another one. Is there actually any action being done to better oneself? Or are we looking at another person who is just running towards something, gaining traction, but not really becoming any better, just driving towards destruction faster? I don't know, because the outro says, I might be a saint worth steeples. I might be the brain of evil. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to me. I also really like one line that comes before this a little bit. It says, precognition lacks in hindsight. I don't know what that has to do with any of the lyrics here, but I really love that observation. Hindsight's 20/20, but precognition doesn't have hindsight. It's about seeing things before they've happened rather than reflecting on them after they have. Maybe that's what this is about too, not reflecting on anything, just going towards that next idea. By the end, why is the end so somber? I might be a saint, I might be pure evil, bad things happen to good people, but good things happen to me. Is there regret in that? Is the implication that he's a bad person? Taking the inverse, if bad things happen to good people, good things must happen to bad people, and that would be an admission that he is bad. I don't know. I feel like this track is more vague than others. And the flip-flop between perspective on the verses and choruses, where the verses seem to very much focus on the idea of negativity, of drugs and vices and all sorts of things to distract and slowly kill our narrator, juxtaposed with the chorus's idea of taking control of life. I don't know, it just doesn't point anywhere specific for me. I would love to hear Will's take on this, but from what little I've read of interviews that he's given, he's not someone who really likes to give meaning to his songs, to his craft. He'll dance around ideas, which, you know, I can honestly respect. So, our journey is coming to a close here. Let's see what's going on with the title track and longest track of the album, Everything is a Lot. And coming off of the somber ending for Compound Fracture, this is low energy, while also being somber within itself. There's a beauty to this though. So, Chemical Overreaction is our penultimate peak. Kind of drop the energy down to wrap this album up.
Until I die,
Yes, Will, that's how it works.
let at this size, no answer can be right. All the moments you've lost, all the money it costs, all the dreams that you tossed aside, all that you feel is only real if you decide it inside. So when you're holding on to everything but you feel
Very lyrical musical with this finale. It reminds me a bit of a Dream Suite in C major.
is a lot.
That's it. We're gonna have like a 3 minutes of sound finale, are we? Well, maybe we are. Like construction sounds. There's drills and saws banging. I should know, this actually sounds like most of my afternoons for the past several months. Okay. It's an interesting way to wrap up an album then. Well, I mean, that's piano and vocals. That's how this album wrapped up. Not much to say about it. I feel like there's a somber reality. Everything else on the album is rather heightened, and we have something more realistically mellow to wrap this album up, which I think speaks to the way that things ended. Kind of bringing a more familiar and real approach to a heightened drug-induced trip. But what else is there to say about this track? It's gorgeous, but it's mellow. And then there's 3 minutes of noise. So I honestly don't know if I was more surprised by 3 minutes of construction or that it was only 2 minutes of construction and a minute of something. What? Oh man. Well, I said my piece on the first half. It's a somber, down to earth, realistic reflection of things. The rest of this album feels heightened and exaggerated. It goes along with a lot of the, I was going to say mostly drug fueled trip through this album, which, a lot of it is, but just obsession in general over all sorts of things, people, relationships, objects like the moon, but certainly alcohol and drugs are present on this album too. It is a lot. And here at the end, it's a bit of a reminder that life is just sort of not that all the time. But maybe it is for Will. For an album called Everything Is a Lot, this album ended up not really being a lot or everything. It was a lot. Sure, but a lot of stuff, not a lot of a lot. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm speaking in circles here. But I also think I came into this expecting another concept album, much like Normal or Selfish, with overarching themes to it. And as we found out in the middle, this is sort of just a compilation of a lot of work Will was working on at the time and just put them together, which is honestly how a lot of albums come together. But I am used to him having thematic coherency between albums, and I figured Everything Is a Lot was going to be an album about anxiety, of the pressures of life from many facets of it, internal and external, personal and professional. Just a lot of aspects of life coming together and creating something a lot. And that isn't actually what it ended up being about at all. Obsession is really the only theme that runs through all of this. But I do like how the end of this album pushes away from exaggerated feelings and atmospheres. We kind of enter into something very minimal. Even as far as the minimal tracks we listened to on this album, none really feel as grounded as this one. I enjoy that, and I think coming off of one of the most energetic tracks on the album, it's great to just kind of pull things back, as I had expected, I think. When Chemical Overreaction ended, I said Jimmy Mushrooms was the low point to the peak. Actually, maybe it was during this song, actually. I had mentioned how Chemical Overreaction was like the penultimate peak. And then the last track is just lower energy, wrapping things up, getting rid of the loose threads. But then it wasn't. I mean, the ending was not that at all. In fact, it kind of felt anxious and tense and kind of angry again. If the first half of this track is an acceptance of things and a return to a normalcy, a fun word to use given the Normal album would come out in a few years later, the construction would be an alteration of that and a transformation into the sound at the end. And I think this is really interesting too, because the only other time we heard anything like this would have been was it First Step? The track with the 99 bottles of beer on the wall at the end? Yeah. Group vocals. Once again, we don't have perfect harmonies here. We don't have backing tracks that are designed to specifically add particular flavors to a harmonic presence. This sounds just like they set up some microphones, got a bunch of people into a room, and they all just sang. Whether they were on pitch or not, they sang together, and it creates a generalized pitch to it all. But interestingly, they all sound very similar. The 99 Bottles of Beer track, I could hear distinct voices, but this sounds like Will Wood doing a lot of backing tracks in order to create the sound that he's in a group of people. I think that's really interesting. I don't know if that's actually how this is, what it's supposed to be or how it was created, but that's how it sounds to my ears, which creates this idea of multiple voices of Will Wood all kind of chanting together in a animalistic or maybe even childish way. The consistent rhythm of this entire outro mixed with the increasing shouting feels very much like kids banging silverware on the table while saying, "We want to eat. We want to eat." And that's kind of the vibe I get from it. It's an outburst of singularity through multitudes. And I think that's what I find most fascinating about it. It doesn't really fit with the rest of Everything Is a Lot, album-wise or track-wise. And I'm not really sure how it fits within this narrative of construction, of breaking down what we had and building this up. Also, as an album closer, it is kind of weak. I'm hoping thematically it has some nice ties to the rest of the themes here, but I honestly thought that the more grounded piano and vocal first half of this track was a much better finale to the album, and leaving it on just the construction would have implied that despite all of the animosity and hurdles and everything that went on in this album, that again, it's not a concept album, but that change is being erected. There is work being done. And as soon as that metaphor clicked for me, it was shattered as this childish chanting came in. And so I was undercut in my understanding of this. And then I also just don't think it's a really great finale either. Just sonically, it's not pleasing to wrap up 50 minutes of music on. I'm going to look at some lyrics to this track. And I guess we're going to wrap up this video. I kind of wish that this track was used in another album. Not the end, which I have learned is a separate track on the remastered version, and I think I like it better that way. I don't think... Well, they are supposed to be listened to in tandem. In a way, this is yin and yang. We're going to see two very distinct viewpoints, two philosophical ideas here. But I do wish that the first part was used to wrap up a different album. I think it is beautiful. It's quite short. Let me just read it. Night sky, I wonder why. I am alive until I die. I find that at this size, no answer can be right. All the moments you've lost, the money it cost, and the dreams that you tossed aside. All that you feel is only real if you decide it inside. This idea that the meaning to life is self-imposed, whatever meaning you want out of life, you have to ascribe it yourself. What life means is up to the person. It's in the eye of the beholder. It then says, so when you're holding on to everything and you feel you cannot, just let it go. Because everything is a lot. And I really like that. It's quite interpretive. Much like the idea that life is only whatever you want it to be about, this sentence kind of has a few meanings depending on your perspective, but the two that I've come across are the idea that hanging on to everything is crazy. Let it go. For an album that has been hyper-focused on obsessing about things that they can't have and being worse off for it, having those obsessions destroy their life, letting go of that, it's a really good message. But also the sheer idea that life is a lot. Let go of some of it. Focus on the stuff that's worth focusing on, because if you try to focus on everything, you're going to get burnt out. I know. That was me last week. Sometimes you just got to let go of some stuff. And I think that there's a lot of good advice in this, depending on where you're from. Like any good art, what you get out of it is just as much as what you put into it. And I think that this is equally clear. It's not vague in what it's trying to say, but it does require a little bit of input to get anything out of it. Your life and lived experiences is going to affect what this means to you. It is undercut, though. Maybe in a thematically positive way, maybe in a thematically negative way, by the finale, which in the remastered version has been titled Destroy to Enjoy. And it has a couple of nice sounding lines, but generally speaking, it talks about how meaningless life is. It brings in a few different Eastern religions and viewpoints on life, people, I should say, and just kind of says that it's all meaningless. It says, we are the Bodhisattva. We are Buddha, dying and waking up as butterflies who fall asleep. We cut down our Bodhi trees, burn Dalai Lama as a witch. From Shangri-La to Auschwitz, we barter. Glory be Satori, but it's hallucinatory, and it's sure to be a story we can tell in purgatory. We saw it once on mescaline. Enlightenment is boring. All your heroes are reincarnated, and the Grateful Dead is touring. They deride mystic wisdom, they deride visions, they deride religion. As they stated, yeah, we've done acid too. We've seen all that. Then just the chanting of the phrase, destroy to enjoy. That the only way to get through life, to find enjoyment, is the destruction of something else. To tear it down, to make yourself feel better. And on the one hand, Will Wood's not wrong. While I vehemently disagree with this perspective, lots of people don't. The sheer idea of enlightenment being boring, and anyone who thinks that they are enlightened is just ridiculous, and they're taking things too seriously. That if you've had visions or have seen anything of import or anything that might make you more spiritual, well, you know, there's drugs that can help anyone do that. You're not special. Again, breaking down anything that would be interesting, special, cool, enlightening, and reducing it down to a parallel that doesn't even really mean anything, but is said anyways. It's a reduction of life's experiences to nothing. This is another side of the coin, one shared by many people, judging by the internet. But I also hate its inclusion here. Primarily probably because I want to see a positive element to this. This is an album that has said, I have fixations, I have obsessions, they have derided my life, they have derailed my life. And here at the end, I think I've learned to just let it go. And I think if we had ended with the construction there, again, the concept of growing out of this and being better would have been the message of this finale. But it isn't. It's not construction to build up, it's demolition to tear down, which is where the ending comes in. And honestly, this satirical jab at positivity is right up Will Wood's alley. I think it's been shaved off a little bit, the harshness and abrasiveness of it over the course of his life, as I think his albums have veered a little bit away from this nihilistic viewpoint. But it would not surprise me if this is where he was right here. He wanted things to get better. He wanted to see improvement within himself. He wanted this first half to be true. And I think in parts of him it is, but it's only parts of him. The other half of him just wants to tear things down. Or maybe even just laughs at the irony and satire of putting a yang to this yin. In a lot of ways, this feels incredibly authentic for Will Wood, even if it's not the way I would have wanted the album to end. And I think ultimately that's my review of this album. It's a little rough around the edges, potential shown that he would of course expand upon in future albums, but it is distinctly Will Wood. Nothing about this album feels like anyone else. Certainly you can find the inspirations in it, particularly in the vocal work. I still feel like he has a lot of Gerard Way meets Tom Waits meets musical theater. But through that lens, it's still very distinctly Will Wood. Warts and all. Sometimes I think the ideas are solid and other times I feel like they're not. But it's very authentic to who he was at this time, and who am I to say that was wrong? These are my thoughts. Will Wood and the Tapeworms, everything is a lot. What did you think of this album? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this album? Let me know. Put all of that as well as anything else you'd like to add into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, you can find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. No, I won't. Tomorrow is Sunday. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. UTC. We're going to do a live stream. Usually goes for about 2.5 hours or so. If you can drop by anywhere in that time frame, you're going to find some great music that we're checking out, good conversation. We've got conversations that go on sometimes about music. We're always talking about the songs we're listening to, but you know, it deviates too. We talk about tech. We talk about language. I don't know how we always get on the topic of language. What were we talking about last week? I don't remember. We got a huge diversion. Oh, like what is art? I think we got into, and like what makes good art. A little bit of philosophical side of things. So yeah, dude, it's a blast. If you can make it, I highly suggest you do. I always put them up afterwards though, if you want to watch them after they've been done. That'll be available on the channel Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.